pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, please.
Alderman Osteen.
Here.
Alderman Morose.
Here.
Alderman Ross.
Here.
Alderman Rucker.
Here.
Alderman Barella.
Here.
Alderman Hoffman.
Here.
Mayor Harmonson.
Here. All right, we do have a quorum, full house, and a special budget meeting. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to the city administrator, Devin Lake, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Board. So I thought the best way to probably go about this is to start at the beginning. And myself or staff will be able to answer any questions that you may have or discussions that you would like to have about anything that's in the budget. I can clarify any questions you have on specific line items. So if you'd like to turn to...
Excuse me, Devin?
Yes.
If I may make a statement, please. Sure. At the last meeting, I had made a statement of, I'd thought of $150,000 that was there. I want to clear that up right away before you started. I found it, okay, but I also misread Devin's memo. When I read her memo, I thought this draft of the budget did not include any increases in retirement. And it did include 1% of an increase in retirement. The way it was read, the way it was written, I interpreted it different. But anyway, it is what it is. So there was not anything, I did not find that in reference to retirement. But as a general overview of the budget, as a general flyover, and I know we want to get into the weeds with it, and I want to do that as well. But I just want to say that we do have an issue with personnel. And I would like to address that right up front. So the board, because I think it'll stop some individual discussion. I'm not the historian, but I have to give you a little history. A number of years ago, this board chose to not budget for 100% of our employees. Okay? That was a choice that was made by the board. I was opposed to it, but that's not the first time I've been opposed to other stuff the board's decided to do. Okay? So what has happened in the last number of years, as Alderman Ross pointed out, our personnel cost keeps going up. Well, and now it's really went up. Well, I had some discussion with Devin in April, and I kind of quizzed them on how they came up with their personnel numbers because I thought I knew the answer. And I got the answer that I was afraid I was going to get. So what has occurred is we used to budget for very low staffing because we had low staffing because we were having difficulties getting staff for a lot of reasons. And then over the years, that has been less and less. We've been able to start staffing more and more because of a lot of reasons. This year, we've obviously, a couple things have occurred. One is we are now at a higher level of staff, and I don't know what that exactly is, but we are. But the other thing is this administration, meaning Devin and April, and I'm not blaming them. Matter of fact, I commend them for doing it. I think it's the right thing to do. But what they have presented us with is a budget that's 100% of employment. It's 100%. We've never budgeted, well, we have not budgeted that for a long time, okay? I'm in favor of it, but and let me tell you what has occurred. When we started back many years ago and said we're not going to budget for 100%, what occurred that year is we had some extra money. Because when we went from budgeting to 100% to budgeting for less, we had some more money that year in the budget. Because we budgeted for what we thought we were going to be in staffing. Again, I was opposed to that. The way it worked out in the past is we budgeted for 100% of employment. At the end of the year, we did not have 100%. We never will have 100%, but we were having a lot less than normal, I guess. But anyway, so whatever that extra was at the end of the budget year, that extra money was one-time money that we could use for whatever, and we used to use it for one-time buying or one-time capital stuff. Now what has occurred this year is that capital money is gone, and the reason it's gone is for two reasons. One, we're budgeting for 100% of our employment, and number two, we don't have any rollover or any extra money from last year because we didn't budget for 100% with less. So if we're going to switch back to it, which I think we should, because whether we want to budget for 100% or not, we're a lot closer to it now than we were before. We're going to take a hit in our capital money until next year, because in 2026, what's going to happen is we will have budgeted for 25 or for 100% in 25. We will end up with, say, 95% of employment. So we'll have that 5% of $7 million that we'll have that we didn't spend that we can use in 26 for one-time capital items. So it's kind of a long explanation, but you need to understand that's kind of where we're at right now. And I know when I talked to Devin and April, they gave me the funniest look when I said, that's the way we used to do it. And they're like, well, we want to budget for 100%. So that's just kind of before we get into each of the different departments. Some of the departments, obviously, that shows up greater than other ones, like police and 911 dispatch. You know, that's there. It's greater than others. So anyway, I just wanted to explain that. I don't know if Devin, if you wanted to just give your 2 cents worth on it, or
Sure.
But I just wanted to share that with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that since this first draft has been published, I'm going to give kudos to two people real quick. Chief and Ron both found a significant amount of money after reviewing their budgets line item by line item. And so the budget that was presented shows that we had to dip into reserve in the general fund because of what they found in savings, both in personnel and some other costs. We are no longer we will not have to dip into reserve. In fact, I'm $67,000 in the black right now. So there has been a few minor tweaks, and we've encouraged all the department heads to take a look at their budgets and see, you know, if there's any savings that they can find. But I will say, going back to the personnel, we frankly can't continue down the road of giving upwards of 10% raises. That's not sustainable over a significant amount of time. I sent out the historical data in regards to what was given in the past. So, you know, last year, if you were a first quartile and got clearly outstanding, you got a 10.25% raise. So I feel like the 2.5% cost of living is in line with what we should expect currently as far as what we're seeing with inflation. We did keep the 1% in the 401A, but we did get rid of the 1% match in the 457. So honestly, I would feel more comfortable dropping these merit raises down another 0.5% at least. But I'm open to hearing suggestions from the board on that part.
Alderman Ross.
I'll address a few things. And Kevin's right that at the end of the day, it's an approach to planning. We're going to start with Kevin's comments about how you plan or not plan for a vacancy. Okay. The probability that, let's just say that we would approve the budget as it was today, okay, that 125.17 people work the amount of time that we expect them to work is not high. Okay. And so there's always the idea of, well, how best to budget for that. Kevin's approach is budget for everybody, and then if you aren't 100% staffed throughout the year, then you're going to have some left over. Okay, that's okay. I mean, it's nothing wrong with it. At the time that we had that decision, we were struggling to find money for capital. as I best recall, and it's been a while, so I don't know that it matters that much, but that was some of the reason that drove those conversations. We can certainly do that. I think that at the end of the day, the best way to plan is to plan for what you expect to happen. And, but it's not necessarily my call, the board has to decide. If someone could quantify to me, for example, what we expect, what kind of vacancy we expect, and it doesn't have to be scientific dollars, but there could be some swags made, and if that number is, you know, $600,000 or $700,000, well, yeah, that changes a little bit of the ideas and some of the concerns that I have. As far as the cost of living, I think the first thing that we need to realize is we didn't give raises because of cost of living, in my mind. That was not what I supported them anyway, or salary adjustments. We gave salary adjustments because we weren't staffed and we weren't competitive, okay? And the idea that if interest, or that, you know, inflation is 2% this year, you're gonna get 2% plus a merit increase, I don't want that to be instilled in this culture. It's just my own personal view, okay? That we have to, for lack of a better term, manage by what the market conditions are, and it shouldn't just be because some number is that's what we do, okay? As far as what I think we should, what we should do this year, what do you call that, the merit increase schedule? I called it comp ratio where I came from. You guys have a different name for it, but whatever that is, that
Matrix.
that matrix.
yeah.
The matrix.
That merit increase matrix.
By quartiles?
Pardon me?
By the quartiles is what you're talking
Yes,
about? Okay.
yes, right. The general philosophy is that if you have the same type of performance at one level within your pay grade versus another level, then you'll get a different percentage. And what tends to happen is the longer that you're in that pay grade level, that you're the same type of performance or level of assessed performance is a lower amount. I agree with that philosophy. I don't know whether I agree that we should lower those. I'd have to think through that a little bit. What I am very convinced that I do not support a 2.5% increase across the board. If there's any increase that I would support, it would be the 2.5% in the, and I can't remember we talked about this, whether it was level 9 and below or level 10 and below. Level 10 and below, because that's where we still have struggles to compete. We still have tell me if I'm wrong, but levels 10 and below is where we have our biggest challenges from a staffing standpoint. And I think that's why I could be convinced that we need to do that, only at those levels. I think the more macro question and concern I have with personnel in general is we have too many people. Okay? I'm just sorry. I just believe we have too many people. I think that we expected, by the way, I signed up and I voted for every budget year, so I'm as much of the problem as anyone else if there is a problem. We have increased our staffing levels because we saw this growth coming. We thought that we were going to need all these things. And there's some of that growth just never has really developed and it hasn't sustained. Okay? Especially the growth rates have not sustained. Okay? And in the end, I have suggestions and ideas on how to do it. I'm not ready. We don't need to get into that right now. But I don't believe that we can sustain this level of staffing, let alone this level of personnel dollars. And so I'll leave it at that for now.
Alderman Rucker?
I feel, I've had no problem with the merit increases. I think merit increases are great. I think people need to be rewarded for their performance. The premium, the cost of living, whatever you want to call that thing that we've done, Alderman Ross's philosophy was that it's a way to get more into the marketplace, I guess you would say. I've always felt that we needed to be able to provide a cost of living every year. That to me is more important than a merit, because I want the people to have the same buying power this year that they did last year. And that's all a cost of living does. It gives you the same buying power. I've not really stood firm ground on whether we do a cost of living or whether we do a merit, but as long as the people get it. But I've changed my mind on that this year. And the reason I changed my mind is it was something that just struck me, it was actually within the last week, is we need to give our people that are here a raise. We need them to sustain the cost of living that they are used to each year. We need to also be positioning ourselves to be in the right place in the market by raising our salaries each year, so that when the new guy or new girl comes on board, we've got a reasonable amount. What happened to us, and I looked and I asked for this the history, and I appreciate that, because that showed that in the early 20s, we went a number of years without giving a premium or a cost of living. And then we found ourselves behind the market. We found ourselves, and the reason we did was this. During those years when we gave that merit raises, of nice merit raises, we took all the people that were here and we were keeping them nice with what was going on out there. But we weren't raising the individual levels, because the individual levels don't raise until we do the cost of living or the premier or premium or whatever you want to call that number. So in essence, a merit increase gives the money to the employees that are here. A cost of living or a premium increase gives the money to the employees that are here, and will give that money to the employee that comes on board a year from now, because it's going to raise that entry level salary up that 2.5%. When we're doing just the merit, it doesn't raise the entry level salary. It only gives the individuals. That's where I now feel that if we don't do, we need to either do both, because we need to stay competitive in the market, but we also need to take care of our people that are here. And I think we thought we were, at least I thought we were doing it right, but then when I look back, that's what got us a little behind the 8 ball on not being competitive, because we weren't raising the levels, we were just raising the people. So, and maybe a combination of both, as Devin said, is one way to look at it. I have a problem I have a problem not providing all employees with a cost of living. So I support a 2.5% for everybody. And if we want to take and give, and I do realize we have levels down in the 7, 8. I don't know if I'll go as high as 9 or 10, but we have those levels there that we do need to look at and try to do something with them, which we did that a number of years ago when we tried to address that, and we did that. And I think we probably need to do something with it again. How to mix that all in there, I don't know. Thank you.
Alderman Osteen.
All right, well, looking at the 2025 budget, one of our biggest issues, obviously, is personnel and salaries as far as increases. One of the reasons we were so competitive and increased those base salaries, merit increases, et cetera, over the last few years is because we were not living up to the motto that we accept and live by every year, and that is to hire and attract the best when it comes to our employees. When we looked at our staffing levels, when we looked at our salaries, et cetera, this is going back about 4 years ago, we were way behind the average for where we should be in competitive markets. And that is one of the reasons we were so aggressive in increasing salaries over those few years periods. But we've come to a point now that continuing to go down that path, we cannot support with the revenue we are receiving. Once again, the reason we were so aggressive in previous years was to basically make it an even playing field, get people up to par where we believe they should be for us to be competitive in hiring the people that we want to hire. So I am all on board with revising and looking again at what we had discussed regarding merit increases, salary increases, et cetera, because once again, the bottom line is the revenue does not support it. Just because what we've done in previous years doesn't mean we've set precedent. That basically was just for us to try to catch up to where we should be in a competitive market. That doesn't mean that we need to continue that growth in salary, merit increase, et cetera, this date moving forward.
Real quick, off the subject, but if you would make sure your microphones are on when you speak. I had a couple people say last week they couldn't hear, but, all right, Alderman Ross.
Just on that subject, because I was just sitting here as I was listening to everybody typing to Michael. Are you aware, this side of the dais is much harder to hear remotely than anywhere else? And if you're not aware of that, we may need to check into it, because especially over here, Phyllis and Bob, it was not near as clear
Right, right.
as.
And I didn't know if it was on or off, or maybe there's a problem, but yeah, just red lights
Is everybody
on.
on?
I do it on and off.
The last meeting, my wife listened to the meeting, and she said that Bob's, half of it or stuff was.
It's harder to hear
Hard-
this
very
side of
hard
the
to hear.
dais.
Yeah.
You know, Phyllis is a little softer speaking, so that is, but she was able to be heard, but Bob was,
Well, they're,
Bob's loud enough, usually okay.
Very good.
they're all on now, so maybe I'll go back and listen to this meeting.
Perfect.
And see if that maybe was the issue.
All right, other questions, comments?
Okay, let's move into, we'll go to revenue first in the general fund.
If you don't mind, tell us page.
It'd be page 11.
Okay, on the middle, page
Yeah.
11.
Page 11.
The middle.
Okay.
Unless you guys want to go through the charts and stuff.
Well, because mine starts with 262 on the bottom right.
Oh, that's your packet number. Look
Okay.
here in the middle,
Okay.
the middle bottom, page 11.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha, I'm very good, oh, with you.
Okay?
Middle bottom, we're going to refer to all day then, right?
Yes.
All right, very good.
Okay, hang on.
Okay.
11 is 60.
General fund revenues is where we're at.
Very good.
Devin, is what we're looking at
Page down here.
include the changes that they found or
No,
no?
I will go over those. No, it
Okay.
does not.
Let's go over this. Sorry.
All right, ease up.
Yes, but I had questions on page 5.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah, if we
say,
wanted to go over the charts, that's fine too. Okay, page 5.
Alderman Osteen.
Yes, thank you. First of all, my first line item here that I have questions concerning is overtime. What was budgeted for 2024 versus year end, I'm confused because as we increase staffing and get to the staffing levels that we should be allotted per department, I'm just confused on how we were over 50% increased in overtime when we should be decreasing based on staffing levels.
So this is one of the line items that Chief was able to find some savings in. So projected year end for overtime for 2024 is down to $439,699. So it's still up. And then fiscal year 25 budget went down to $429,000.
Yeah, yeah,
463.
right.
So I'll defer to Chief to be able to answer more of that overtime question in regards to why it went so far over in '24.
So on the police side, we had, obviously, we were shorthanded for the first part of the year. Excuse me. And then we had a significant amount of overtime when we lost Officer Carson. We had to cover that entire shift for like 5 or 6 periods on that one. Then on communications, I'm trying to look at my notes here. For communications, we estimated that we would spend $44,000 in overtime. We've been significantly short in communications till pretty much the first half of this entire year. So our salaries will be down, but our overtime's gonna be up in communications. Then on ambulance, we estimated that we would use $110,000 this year, and we are going to use, hang on just a second. looks like, oh, I don't have that one here. I'm short on that one. But with our ambulance, we were shorthanded on, for the first part of the year, we were down to 3 medics when we should have had a total of, or I'm sorry, we were down to 2 medics at one time when we should have had 3. We had part-time staff that wasn't able to give us the hours that we needed to be, so we were using a significant amount of overtime there. Plus, each one of our full-time staff, they get 8 hours overtime every week because they work 48-hour shifts.
All right, well, I'm not so concerned with the year end versus the budget, which obviously is a little concerning. I'm just concerned with what we're budgeting for 2025, because once again, yes, I understand that there's some one-offs for 2024. The absence of Officer Carson, part-time staff versus full-time staff in ambulance services, et cetera. I just don't see the correlation between what had been budgeted for 2024 versus what is budgeted for 2025, because once again, as we reach the required staffing levels per department, how can we keep increasing what we're budgeting for overtime?
Water and sewer also had a lot of overtime, and I'm assuming that's probably going to eat up a lot of the overtime in '25 as well. Zach, can you explain overtime on those 2 departments?
Sure. Though it's not, I guess, tech-based. I mean, the more people you have, it's always better to get more things done during the day. Doesn't leave a lot of things hanging out there, but every time a call comes in after hours, it's overtime-based. As the system ages, the sewer department gets more call-outs. Water's pretty steady, maybe 1 or 2 a week, but nothing compared to, 8 or 10 on the sewer side. It's just normal. When calls come in after hours, they get overtime.
I still can't wrap my head around it. Once again, as staffing levels increase, how come we are still projecting and increasing overtime? I can't wrap my head around that thought.
In past, it was always that overtime was needed to fill because staffing was low. And
Yes.
that's, I agree with you, Bob, and I have that same, each individual department, I have that same issue that I've brought it out to where I'm like, okay, since we're budgeting 100% for staff, then, where's that overtime at? Now, my concern was, are we taking overtime and saying, well, last year we spent 100,000, so next year we're going to spend at least 100 plus more. If we're taking that philosophy, that's wrong, because that $100,000 that we spent last year was a chunk of that, and I'm just using an example here, but a chunk of that was because we weren't staffed. But now, if we're budgeting for a full staff, then the overtime we should be budgeting for should not be to backfill when we have vacancies. It should be for those unforeseen items such as like water and sewer and transportation being called back in and they don't get the comp time. Same with the police. I mean, with all those, it shouldn't, and so I guess it all depends on how staff determine the overtime. If they used something from last year, if you use the numbers from last year on how much the dollars we spent for callback overtime, in other words, if you could quantify that last year we spent $50,000 in water and sewer staff coming back in, I'm okay with using that number to justify budget going forward. But if you use $50,000 for that and another chunk because you were understaffed, then it shouldn't be used for that, since we're budgeting 100% of our employees.
Alderman Ross.
Just a perspective. Our planned, 2021, as I best recall, 2021 was one of the toughest years around here for staffing. COVID was not good, and 2021 was really busy, and staffing was a significant challenge. And I think in 2021, and I don't have it in front of me, but that was one of the years that we did a salary adjustment, okay, because we didn't think that we were competitive and staffing was an issue. And in 2021, the projected year end, this is out of the 222 operating budget book, was 239,800, okay? we are planning for $489,000 worth of overtime next year. And we all think that we're much better staffed, I think. If anyone wants to disagree, go right ahead. Much better staffed than we were in 2021. It feels like that either one, we have ingrained that overtime is quite all right, or two, that really we've kind of lost control around how we're managing overtime. And I realize there's been a lot of changes, a lot of leadership changes here with the staff. But this is something that I think what Bob's trying to say is I can't wrap my head around it is this needs to change. This type of trend has got to change, and not only should it flatten, but it should start taking a nosedive in some ways comparatively on what it's been. Because for overtime to double in 3 years when staffing has to be at least 50 to 60% better than it was in 2021 is just unexplainable, I believe.
Alderman Rucker?
Chief, is one of the areas I had a thought that maybe some of it is reflected. We have a deal to where people can hire our officers for securities and that work.
Correct.
Okay. When that officer works is that overtime?
No.
So
That's
that
paid
number
in-
is not, that number that they get paid out, which should be offset in the budget by, by revenue. It should be an offset. I mean, if we're going to pay more out, but that does not come into overtime?
Correct. That comes out of contractual and O&M.
Okay, all right. That was, I was hoping that was an area that it wasn't tracking right, but okay. Sorry. I was hoping for a fix there. Well, I just concur 100% with Alderman Ross, and that's why I don't know, I would challenge staff to be able to justify their overtime. I don't know any other way to that. I would challenge that number. That's it.
Yeah. I personally am not happy or will not support a budget where we're budgeting almost $500,000 in overtime. When, once again, our staffing levels are almost at 100% on where we should be. Like I said, it's an issue I can't wrap my head around on why we are still increasing from 2024 to 2025 in overtime, yet we're still increasing on staff salaries because we are gaining more staff. So that's just me personally.
So Maddie is going to be here at 4 o'clock. She's the one who did the benefits calculations, so I'll let her explain that. She's in a webinar. But she had a worksheet she received from Gina, I believe, that did this calculation for her, so.
We need to remember, though, and I'm not making the excuses, but the snowstorm, the water breaks, the sewer, those are overtimes we've got to understand. And we just have to understand that's part of it. But from there, the other overtime I see is it should be offset by salaries being budgeted at 100%, and
Yes.
we're not spending the money. So I think, I don't know what else we can delve into that one.
Just to go back, approximately 93,000 is scheduled overtime for the ambulance. So
Don't you have
just-
scheduled overtime for police?
No. No, the way the FSLA rules are, they're different for the police department than they are for the ambulance.
Yeah, I know they are, yeah.
The ambulance and communications are 40-hour work weeks. Ambulance works 48-hour shifts, so they get 8
So when
hours
you're
overtime
when you're
weekly.
fully staffed in ambulance, you still have that much scheduled overtime?
Yes. Each full-time employee in the ambulance gets 8 hours overtime a week.
Yes. Well, then that gives us another issue that we need to be advertising that as what their salary is, because when you're telling an ambulance person that they're going to be, they're starting out at 45,000, they're not, because they're starting out at 45,000 base, but they have a guarantee of X number of dollars worth of overtime, which that needs to be included in what that start pay is.
And we do let them know that during the hiring process.
But is that reflected in our numbers? Is that reflected in our salary ranges on our charts?
No,
No.
you just have the base.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
What we have here on the chart as a starting salary for a paramedic is not correct.
Yes.
because they have guaranteed overtime with the way we have scheduled. We can change that scheduling, and maybe that needs to be looked at as possibly changing that scheduling around where they don't have that guaranteed overtime as a way to reduce it.
If I may, I think that was just a lot of my concern. Well, first of all, it's my first budget to sit through. It just makes it really hard when you're looking at numbers or percentage and changes that are way over 50% or 145%. There's no like explanation or no how you got there, what's included, what's not included. And the same thing as far as like the assets too, it's, the capital improvements. I just think if there's gonna be big changes like that, there should be like a little bit more background, a little bit more detail, what was considered in that, what.
So on the overtime, I'm just looking back through, the historical stuff. Like, for example, in the sewer fund, only $30,000 was budgeted in overtime this year. And we're projecting 100. And in previous years, it hasn't been anywhere near 30 for several years. So I'm confused as to why those budget numbers were so low. And that's why it's looking like it's so extreme. Same thing with water. Water was budgeted at 25,000 and it hasn't been near 25,000 for 3 years. So I think some of this is unrealistic expectations in the original 24 budget that couldn't be met. So, but Maddie will be able to clarify more of that when she gets here.
What could have also happened, and I mean, we're saying, trying to figure out what could have happened, but when we changed over to not budgeting for 100% of the staff, maybe we should have adjusted more of the overtime at that time. I mean, but we didn't. I mean, I'm not trying to cry over spilt milk, but just trying to help us to figure out. The bottom line is we got to figure out going forward, we got to do it.
Right.
If I could just add that, I get everything that you're saying, Devin. I think there was an expectation that staffing with some of the changes in public works and so forth were going to change. Now, honestly, I think they have. I think we're better staffed than we have been for 2 or 3 years. But just 2021, I think, I'm not sure, but somewhere in there, we were 4 people in sewer, 1 person short. We had hardly anyone. We spent as a system, and I realize it's not broke out. It's hard to, the way this whole thing's set up is try to set out, look at, each way, each line item as to on overtime. But as a system, we spent $240,000 in overtime in one of the worst years that we ever had in staffing, okay? And it is now over, we're set up for doubling that in one of our best years in staffing we've had for 5 or 6 years. So.
Sounds like Maddie's going to address this when she gets here.
Yeah, we can talk more about that when she gets here.
Okay.
Does anybody have any other questions on pages?
Yes.
Okay.
This was the page I had lots of questions on. Holiday pay. Budgeted this year for $172,850. Year unprojected $80,417. Budgeted for 2025 $197,330. Is there another holiday we are honoring I'm not aware of? Because I don't see the mathematical equation on how that all pans out.
Well, I do believe you guys did add a couple of holidays, but that has gone down.
Once again, 172 versus actuality of 80. And now we're projecting 197. I can't see that.
I didn't have too much of a problem with that, Bob, for 2 reasons. One is I didn't look at the 24 number because you're only paying holiday pay for the people you have employed. So if you were that much, if you didn't have the staff, you didn't pay the holiday payout. And if you look at the 172 to the 197, basically, I didn't do the math on it, but there's about a 6.5% increase in salaries anyway, because on this budget, there's a 2.5% on salary and about 4%, 3.5%, 4%, depending on where they sit in the quartile. And if you take it to the max, so if you take 6.5% times the 172, which I don't know what that is, that's going to get you
10 grand.
what that's just what it should be without even adding holidays.
Right. That's only about $10,000, not $100,000.
Well, it's not going up 100,000, it's going up from
Well-
172 to 197.
But budgeted versus actuality, that's what I'm looking at.
The reason the actuality is down is because you're only paying holiday pay on the people that are here.
Well, we didn't increase our staff by 50%. We increased it by
decreased
less
it.
than 10.
We didn't have the staff.
But we weren't at a
My
50%
assumption, I
shortage
don't
of
know. I
staff.
think-
That's what I can, I can understand, yes, we're increasing staffing levels, so therefore the holiday pay is going to increase, but not to the tune of $100,000.
Well, and I think we're just trying to guess at what it could be, and we need to have somebody tell us what it is.
And again, this is on Maddie's benefits spreadsheet that she did. So this will be, everything that's on this sheet was prepared by Maddie.
Yeah, okay. And I'm hoping the board is supporting me on this one, because I just can't, once again, see
Absolutely.
the correlation of what was budgeted versus actuality. And yes, I understand Kevin's argument about, yes, we've increased staffing, but if you do just basic numbers, that does not justify a 100% or $100,000 increase, not even close to it. It's a fraction of that. So, yes, I guess when Maddie's here, she can clarify that as far as the holiday pay.
This is also a line item that Chief did some adjustments on. I don't know if you can clarify some more on your end. They actually both went up.
That's what I was
after
gonna say,
his-
both of ours went up.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the page we just need to wait until Maddie gets here and go back to.
So the actual,
Actual year end went up to 149,000. And the 25
Is that the
budget,
year-end?
And next year, we do have one more holiday than we have this year.
correct.
what additional holiday are we celebrating?
It's the way the holidays fall with us. If the holiday falls on a Thursday, we get Friday.
Friday.
And
Yeah.
Oh.
the-
Yeah, and
the
a Monday, yeah.
So we have two next year.
Right.
Okay, well, more clarification, because once again, looking at the numbers across the board, I can't make sense of it.
Yeah. Okay.
So do we have copies of this changes that you guys are talking about?
No.
Okay.
I didn't want to issue out another draft and confuse anybody.
Okay.
So,
Well, I hope Maddie can help us understand it, but for the projected year end, in 2 or 3 weeks to go from 80,000 to double seems like maybe we weren't really paying attention whenever we planned it, but maybe I'm missing something, so.
yeah, I think there was some confusion on Chief's budgets on holiday pay on Maddie's part.
Okay.
No.
That's fine. It happens.
Well, the other thing is I will just put it out there, just for the board to understand as well, is, and I've seen this in my last meeting that I had with Devin in April, not throwing rocks. Last year, we had a couple people that predominantly did the budget. A couple, 2 or 3 people had their fingers on the budget. This year, we have lots of people involved in it. Lots of people. So, just, it is what it is, and I'm not throwing rocks at any way of the procedure, but some of that can be understanding how you manipulate the numbers, how you interpret the numbers, so some of that can be in that situation as well.
Okay.
Okay, my last question on this sheet, workers' compensation. Are we just keeping our fingers crossed that
On what, Bob?
workers' compensation, that in 2025, we're going to have 50% less claims? Because it seems odd to me that we budgeted 211, year-end projected 182, but we're only budgeting 93 for 2025. I'm like, yes, I'm all about best-case scenarios, but
Right.
if historicals say, here's our average annual workman's compensation claims and what we have to pay, it seems odd to me that we are cutting that by 50%. I guess we're being very optimistic for 2025.
Well, I believe this, again, is
Again,
Maddie's.
it's Maddie question.
Yes.
Yeah.
This entire page, Maddie.
But I
gets
just wanted to
her-
state that out there, once again, that seems, once again, very odd to me,
Right.
that if historical show numbers, then how are we cutting at 50%? Like I said, maybe we're just keeping our fingers crossed.
Right. And there may have been some major claim that she knows about that, we don't anticipate repeating. I don't know. I will let her address that when she gets here. Any additional questions on pages 4, 5?
I want to make a comment about page 4.
Okay.
Just as an overview consideration, We historically have around a low or a mid-$30 million budget, and this year we have a $42 million budget. That's not because we have a whole bunch more money. That's because we had right at $8 million worth of rollover, okay? 4 million of that is the airport. 2 million of that was from sewer. Those were some numbers that I was able to pick out real quickly. So when you look at our budget, it's right at the same place we have been. Unfortunately, our revenue is not keeping up with our expenditure. Our expenditure is overspending our revenue, however you want to look at it. I mean, we can, but we're still at about a $34 million budget. It's only we got up to 42 because we got $8 million worth of projects we didn't get done this year. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on pages 6, 7, or 8?
Just for a process question, so for example, are we gonna go over also individual departments, or we're gonna?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I
Correct.
have, then I don't have a question at this point.
Okay. Okay. Any questions on page 9 or 10? That's the charts.
Nice colors.
Yeah, I didn't pick those. Gina picked those.
But it just really pop out.
Is 10 the revenues, I'm sorry?
Yeah, 10-00 is revenues.
So I just have a comment, and that is we can all talk about $45 million budgets, okay?
Yes, yes, Alderman Roth.
Yes, we can. But I think what reality is that the predominance of what makes a difference is our sales tax revenues. And our sales tax revenues in the city this year or in 2025 are forecast to be 6,500 for general fund. And then when you do CIT and transportation, you double that. So $13 million is now I realize we have franchise fees and we have permits and we get grants, and we also have sewer revenue and we have water revenue, okay? But what really makes a difference one way or another is the $16 to $18 million in franchise fees and taxes and sales taxes. So I guess the reason I bring that up is that I think that, you know, when you start telling people that we got a town of 4,300 people and we got a $45 million budget, that they start doing, oh my God, you got $100,000 a person to spend money. Well, we don't really have that, okay? And so I think, you know, it's all about perception sometimes. And so I've kind of, because the first time I heard we had a $45 million budget last year, I went and looked, it's like, yeah, we do, but we don't have like $45 million to spend. What happened? So I'm trying to figure out how better to possibly discuss what our budget is in a way that people understand some of the constraints that we have. Because, yeah, there's, you know, whatever, there's 20-some million dollars, but there's sewer and water revenue and some grants and things like that really don't have a whole lot to do with the flexibility we have. So, just a thought. That's all I have for now.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on general fund revenue?
Well, I'm sorry, I do have one more, and that is, if that's okay. So we, for example, in projected year end, and I'm under permits and building inspections, okay? So I see it.
I'm sorry, where are you?
Page 11?
Page 11.
Okay.
Oh, is it page 11? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My
Okay.
deal says page 10 over here
Okay.
on the side, so it's page 11. Okay to be on that page?
Yes.
Okay. So permits are kind of up and down depending on actuals from one year to the next. Projected year into 2024 was $380,000. Is that the Oasis?
Part of it, half of it.
Okay, so have all the permits been issued for the Oasis?
No.
Okay. Are we, and I realize that we may not be doing that yet, do we have any plans, if we're not already, to start tracking costs of inspections against any significant permits? So, you know, I realize that you may not track inspections for a single residential home, and, you know, we went out there 3 times, and that, you know, cost us X number of dollars per inspection. But my concern, and we may need to talk about this more under the engineering, is that, you know, it seems like we're spending an awful lot of money in inspections, and I'm not sure permits are making up for it. So do we have any perspective on that at all?
Yes.
Okay.
So the numbers that you see here for the building permits, that is for the building permits and building inspections. The revenue that it's brought in for sewer and water doesn't hit this account.
Right.
Okay, so that's going to be a different, those will be, whenever you issue a site development permit with sewer and water fees for the inspections, those hit a different account.
They're different revenue, because it goes, I'm assuming what you're saying is it goes towards revenue for sewer or water. Okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so these numbers here are just for building permits, nothing to do with site development.
So have we issued any building permits for the Oasis?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
The biggest one is forthcoming. We have not collected the fees on that, but the calculated fees for the Oasis, $294,000 for building permit fees. There will be a portion of that I will be bringing forth to you guys for consideration and approval for plan review services.
And that's fine. So back to my question, I don't know that I've got the answer. Or do we have anything in place yet, or do we have plans to put anything in place so that we can start understanding if our permit fees are at least covering our inspection fees?
Well, I think Drew is currently doing an evaluation for the Cochrane fees in regards to permit fees. But once we bring all that in-house, that would be tracked separately. As far as building, I can't answer that for Ron.
So we don't track it. Our system tracks, we enter all the inspections that are conducted. We don't have a time stamp on each inspection. That is something that could be done with our new cartograph program, as I understand it, if that's something that we're looking to do or something that the board is interested in reviewing.
And I know this carries over to other conversations, and so we can stop here and then pick it back up when we get into engineering and so forth. I will just say this. 4 inspectors and $200,000 worth of outside inspections in 1 year just seems like an awful lot of inspections. I hope that permits are covering that.
You're combining engineering and building? Mm-hmm. Okay, I was going to say, I have 2 inspectors. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, can I follow up on it? Because I'm still a little confused. The $380,000 we're projecting in building permit fees, those cover the building inspections. Are there need within those permits for engineering inspections?
So there's a current internal policy for any infrastructure that the city would take over and maintain, namely mostly sewer stations, in order to abide by the city guidelines and more closely resemble what, the Public Works Department needed to have done and make sure that our system is standard and uniform so that they can work on it. The engineering department has been inspecting residential and commercial infrastructure that will eventually be taken into city inventory. So yes.
So though, I still haven't gotten my answer yet. Let me ask it direct. Ron, your cost to run your office is a lot of it, and it's not all 100%, I know, but is received from building permits.
Yes.
Okay. Of that $380,000, does all that go towards your department?
Yes.
So, Drew, your department is projecting, and I don't have it in front of you, X number of thousands of dollars in inspections. Where's that money coming from to reimburse the city for the X number $100,000 and whatever it is that your department is spending? Ron or somebody is saying that there's some money that we get in from water and sewer
Yeah, so whenever we issue a building permit, there are different calculations we put in. The one calculation that comes in, back into the building department is the building permit fee. Now, for the water tap, the sewer development, and then the site development permit fees, which the site development permit fees give you a quantity of an asset, an estimated valuation. That total cost, you take 2% of that, and that is what we collect for site development, for infrastructure, sewer, water, pavement, storm drainage, and that goes into the specific accounts.
So that is not, that 2% is not included in this 380,000?
That is correct. As they relate to sewer and water. Have you got?
Yeah, so if you look at pages 42 and 46, I know we're not there yet, but that's where the water and sewer portions of that revenue hit. I mean, he collects it as part of the permit, but, you know, our financial software divvies it up to the correct revenue line items, which is Fund 30 for water and Fund 35 for sewer.
Well, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I guess maybe to cut to the chase is that where are we getting the revenue to justify the engineering services and inspection services that is done out of Drew's office? That's, I guess, where I'm looking at, because it appears we're going to be doing some things or wanting to do some things, but I don't see it offset by revenue, and that's where I'm concerned. I see what Ron's doing in his department and being offset by the fact of all these fees and permits, okay, but where, in order for us to see if we're getting the right amount of money, we got to see where it's coming in at and where we can track it.
So it's in the water and sewer.
So it's just in the water and sewer.
Correct.
Correct, yeah. The engineering department, as far as I know, does not have any revenue, as far as I understand it.
Okay, well then, let me back up one more further. We're on this, I realize we're supposed to be, we're not on the not inspection, but Devin, you and I had this conversation in your office about the fact of the fee that we've got budgeted for the inspectors down at the Oasis. And we had that discussion of what, when, and where, some of that could be for the rides. Is that out of Ron's, is Ron the one that does the rides? So is that be coming out of this 380, or is Drew going to be doing the rides?
So the footings and foundations for the rides will be inspected by building department staff. The rides themselves are considered by the building code a special inspection. The applicant is responsible for paying for that special inspection. So they will be obtaining a third-party inspection group that does this internationally. Those inspectors have to be approved by me, so it's going to be a corporation with credentials, and they provide me the reports. The same with the Missouri fire chiefs, they do the inspection on the rides as well.
That really changes our discussion we had because of the assumption of what that fee was going to be, why it was so heavy. Now it really takes.
Right. So the Bartlett and West contract, that was not for building, that was for engineering, your Bartlett and West contract?
I only understand this contract through former employees, and, you know, my overlap with that employee is pretty brief. They have been doing site inspections on infrastructure. I have the bills from them. I can go over what they have been doing, but I think it's the city also does on-call inspections of commercial property and commercial developments. And the engineering department doesn't, as far as I understand, charge a fee for those. I think if I had to make an assumption, it's because it's a development, and the development will eventually pay sales tax, I assume, and some sort of, economic exchange, and that's. But yeah, the city has on-call inspections through Cochrane for commercial and now some residential infrastructure that will be taken over by the city, so city inventory, and then Barlow and West is doing commercial construction inspection for the Oasis only. And OWN is doing construction inspection for the cost share with MoDOT. And I believe if we wanted to enter into that supplemental agreement, the engineering survey and services designer who's doing the TAP grant for the 42 sidewalk project would also potentially do the construction inspection for that sort of grant project. As far as I know, those are the only construction inspection contracts we have right now. I assumed that, yeah, the Barlow and West deal was going to be doing some of the rides and other commercial inspections, but that was because of a conversation I had with a former employee.
Alderman Rucker, did you have something to say there?
I am just very confused here, and I think that there needs to be some delving into this, because I don't understand why we even have that contract, because Ron's telling me that the rides is going to be taken care of separately. Devin and I's conversation was we thought the rides was going to be included with the
Bartlett and West.
Bartley one. I think that my understanding, the only reason the Bartley one was what we obtained Bartley was to do the inspections that Cochran was going to be doing.
Yes.
Okay? And that would be it, that it was only what Cochran was going to be doing. And my question is whatever Cochran was going to be doing, why can't we do that?
Right.
That's why we've got an engineer to be able to start that department. Why can't we start doing some of that? And we're taking and raising that contract for Bartley, and we ought to be cutting that thing way back. We are not committed to those folks. We're only committed on what we tell them to do. I think there's some, and I realize it's changing the guards could be part of this thing, but I think there's some misunderstanding or some
Right. I agree. I think
delving into it that needs to be done.
I think Drew and I can talk and we can cut that 194,000 that was approved by the board down significantly if we, bring in those two in-house construction inspectors. As long as there is no inspection done for the ride portion and it's just for infrastructure, I don't see why we can't do that in-house.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Alderman Ross?
So a couple things. One, if I'm reading the revenue correctly, then there's only about $100,000 in all of water and sewer that is going to be any revenue for any inspections, okay? And I'm not even sure that it's that high. But to give some perspective. So Drew, you mentioned, and I understand that somewhere this was a change, and it would have been before many of us were here, but Ron, you might understand this. But this policy about, for lack of a better term, underground is engineering inspection and above ground is building inspection. How long has that policy been in place?
We had a change of thought, sometime, was it September or August? September or August, to make sure that all city inventory was inspected and met city guidelines, just a little more thoroughly than the building department was able to provide at times.
For as long as I can remember, all commercial construction was inspected by city engineering. It wasn't until we put out city engineering to an outside source that we tried to fill in and fill in the gaps rather than waiting a few days for inspection. As long as we had a staff member who was up to speed on that infrastructure, he could provide that inspection same day. So we did fill in, and I'm sure that caused a little bit of confusion. I know it did out in the field too, because we still get all the calls for those inspections, but now we forward them on. It was here recently that we got into the conversations about who's the most qualified to take a look at a lift station that's going to be taken into city inventory. Obviously, it's the sewer guys, the guys that work on it that'll be replacing it, and the city engineers. So they have taken on, as Drew said, all of the infrastructure that will be taken into city inventory. For instance, if you've got a line going from a house to a grinder station, we will take care of that. We can inspect that. That's very simple. If you have a grinder station, the pumps, the float's got to be this high, we're not up to speed. We don't deal with that every day. So that's where Drew and I spoke and said, it's in the best interest of everybody if you guys are the ones doing that inspection because you deal with it every day.
So I don't disagree from a quality standpoint that, you know, theoretically, the engineers are supposed to have a special knowledge around the inspections. I mean, I know that at one point in time, and I believe it was Lloyd at the time, was shared between engineering and the building department. Now, that's been a few years back, and it seems like that separated once we got Cochran. I think that those decisions have economic implications, and I think as we start taking on some of those approaches, that we may be adding costs that we don't even realize we're adding. It's all with good intentions, okay? But those costs have got to be figured out how we handle those. At the end of the day, we're seeing revenues over the last 4 years of raising 10%, and we're seeing O&Ms up 20% and personnel up 75%. Those are numbers that can't sustain. And until we can make all, and I'm not saying anybody did anything wrong. It sounds great. What you just said, Ron, sounds great. Sounds like it costs about $200,000 or $300,000 what you guys just decided. I'm not sure, but in the budget, it looks kind of like that. And where's the revenue coming from? So as long as we have that kind of mentality around those decisions and we know where that revenue is going to come from, I got no issues with it. But I'm not convinced that we know where that revenue is going to come from. That's all I have right now.
If I could
Alderman, yes, please. No, go ahead, Ron.
Just on that same topic, that's something that obviously I've seen all 4 of the notebooks or 3 that Drew has filled up since he's been here with projects and tasks. This is something that I did take to Cochran and to Mike Welty previously, that the schedule of fees that we have, or that the engineering department has, that was drawn up by a couple engineers ago. So I think it's due for an update. So whenever we're talking about an estimated cost of construction for infrastructure and our permit fee is 2%, I'm not sure we're not collecting 2% on 70% of the actual cost. So that would be a revenue builder.
Alderman Rose.
Just to clarify, going back to the rides, we inspect the actual base of what the ride sits on, right? What you said. And then the actual ride, the company that is putting it in, they do the inspection, but it has to be approved by you, or how does that work?
Yes, so whenever you design a footing for the rides, the footings are designed by a team of engineers. And simply, the only thing that my guys are doing is they're going out, reading a blueprint and saying, it's got to be this wide by this deep and this much rebar, tied this much on center. Those are the easiest inspections we can do. Now on the rides, you've got welding inspections, you've got bolt pattern inspections, bolt torque inspections. So the building code says whenever you get into stuff like that, that is called a special inspection. A special inspection should not be the burden of the municipality, but the burden of the developer. So the developer has to come to me and say, we've got Richard Ross, PE, he's been doing inspections on rides all around the world for the last 30 years. Would you accept him as our inspector of record? Absolutely. Look at his credentials. And then he would be the one going out doing the inspections, this ride, these posts, yada, yada. And here's the inspection slip for the city. We put that in the file and say, thank you very much.
Because it's certainly out of our realm. I mean,
Yes, ma'am.
And I concur that anything we can do with our engineering department and not having Cochran interfere, I don't mean interfere, but be involved, I'm all for it. That's why we have it here now. Thank you.
Okay. We want to move on from general fund revenue onto the mayor and board. It'd be page
please.
15.
Thank you.
Did she say 15?
15.
Oh, or,
Or do you want to,
What?
do you have questions on 13 or 14?
I got page 12, I'm sorry, my apology. We transferred, in 2024, we budgeted nothing for a transfer to CIT, but yet we show a transfer of $303,000 projected at year end. Was this a budget amendment that we did?
No, so whenever I was doing the year-end stuff, there was a, we had done originally a transfer from general fund to the sewer department. And we did not need that transfer, but I found out from Carrie Bell that we were required to do that transfer so that, it was ARPA funds, so it had to go to the sewer department. In order to help general fund break even for the year, I took that 303 from the CIT for parks capital improvements, which is part of the identified capital improvement fund, to try to help the general fund break even for the year.
So shouldn't that be a budget amendment?
Well, absolutely, but this is a draft. So this is just a proposal. If that's not the route that you guys would like to go, I can take that back out, but that's going to make it go back
Okay.
into reserve.
Okay. I just saw that and I couldn't remember us doing anything, so it's.
No.
It's a suggested budget transfer.
Correct.
Amendment that needs to be coming if we, okay, that's, all right. I'm okay, I'm probably okay with it all the way, but at least I'm okay with it being here.
Right.
I understand
Yeah,
how it
no,
got
it's
here.
Not final.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on pages 13 or 14?
So I just, a clarification, what is public relations costs under mayor and board of aldermen? Not that it's a huge amount of dollars, it's not like it is going up some, it's going up 30-some%, or, I don't know what that is.
Where's it at?
Flowers, anything that for any employees that, like for funeral arrangements or.
So all of the organization versus just the mayor and board of aldermen?
Right.
Okay.
Comes from the board.
Yeah, plants to funerals,
Okay.
the dinner
Service
gifts from the
awards.
mayor.
Like his,
Service awards.
service
Yeah.
awards, and then he
My
does the
yellow,
volunteer
my
dinner.
yellow tabs off.
Okay.
Done. Yeah.
Yep.
Do we know why it's going up 50%?
We kept it at what was budgeted for '24, which was 6,000.
Oh, we just held the budget?
Sorry.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions on the mayor and board of aldermen budget, 1001? Okay. 1002 is the collector. It stayed the same, there's no change. 1003, city administrator budget. Any questions there?
I guess I would ask, why is there overtime in personnel and the city administrator? Who all is underneath you now? So I'm trying to keep
It
track.
would be me, April, and Jamie would be
Is
the only
overtime-
one
Okay,
that would be on overtime.
okay. And the professional services?
That's for the citizen survey.
We just did one, didn't we, 2 years ago, a year ago?
From what I understood, they do it every year. It was actually absorbed from 1013, that 15,000 was in the overhead fund, and I took it into mine because Gina did the citizen survey, so I took it into my budget.
Okay, that's why there's no historical cost in there?
Correct, it came from 1013, yeah.
And do we do a citizen survey every year?
She had told me that she had done one every year.
I don't recall that.
I believe what happened is we didn't do it every year, but there was a suggestion to do it every year. That's what I think is where it comes from. I don't know that I can support doing it every year, especially because by the time we get it and we delve through it and we start making changes, but I do think there's some kind of regularity we need to do rather than the way we did it before, whenever we thought we needed to do it. I would support that being done every other year, right, every year.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
I just had one question. What happened to your health insurance?
Wait, can we finish up, before we
Yeah.
get to that, Bob, can we finish this topic of the survey?
Would you like me to remove it for 25 and we revisit in 26?
I'll make a motion we do so we can just do it right, if that's okay. If we need to do it that way, I don't care.
We need to do it, or we just need to give board
Just
consensus?
direction.
Direction, I think is what we need to do.
Any opposition to removing?
No.
Okay.
All right.
I'm sorry, Bob. I just wanted to
No, that's
finish that
fine.
up before we move to another one.
Alderman Osteen, please.
Health insurance. What's going on with your health insurance?
So myself, I am under my husband's insurance, so I only get the reimbursement. April is under Ron's insurance, and Jamie is under her husband's insurance. So
Cool.
none of us
Okay.
take it at the moment. That's why it went down so much.
Yeah, I was just curious, looking at the historicals and seeing, wait a minute, did you guys decide we don't need insurance?
No, that's definitely not it. We most certainly do need insurance.
That's all, just a quick question there.
Okay. Any other questions on 1003? Okay. 1004, city clerk. Any questions there? This does have the added deputy clerk position under salaries.
Alderman Ross.
That was the first question, was does it have that,
Yes, it
that
does.
in there? And,
Yes.
and while I remember the conversations, I don't have any data that helps me support that. So,
If you look, Richard, at the negative on the salary, because I did the research, if you look at the negative on the salary for the city administrator and the positive on the city clerk, and then you also look at the fact of the negative on the treasurer, because there's a half a treasurer person that came off of the treasurer and came to the city clerk, all those salaries end up, our salaries are the same because they've moved some people around. That's why this 159, in my mind, was justifiable. Now, if you may not agree with the people coming out of the city administrator's office and a half a person coming out of the treasurer, but that's where it does balance out dollar-wise. I'm not saying philosophy-wise, but just dollar-wise, if that helps.
I guess I would just say I understand that the dollar's balance. Yeah. Fair enough.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, where y'all out with that word data? But I've been starting to use it more and more, and it would be nice to have, well, we've got some things that are different and so forth. I want data if you want me to support additional headcounts. As a matter of fact, I don't think that we should approve the headcounts that we have planned, and we'll get into that as time goes on. But I don't have data.
This is not additional headcount, so Richard, I'm not saying,
Depends on how you look at it. It's additional headcount for the city clerk position, for the city clerk department.
but it's not additional headcounts to the city, for the overall city.
I
We're
understand.
taking headcounts away from other departments, so.
Oh, I understand that.
It's not additional headcounts.
I just mean that overall, the head counts that is overall, I don't support the overall head count, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. I'm just helping make sure we all understand.
Okay.
That
all I
we
have.
all
Go
do
ahead.
understand the data we have, and then we can make the decisions.
So I'll speak and I'll let Tara speak as well. I know that there's an entire room over here that needs to be documented and got rid of. There's a whole
sorry,
room of-
what?
There's a room over here that is full of historical documents that need to be scanned and microfished, or whatever you call it, laser fished, and get rid of. I know that was a priority of the board. That is one of the things that I had charged Jan to do. So in this position would help my department if needed, which I don't need one full-time, obviously. But it will also help Tara do backup for the clerk as well as the court clerk. If Annie is sick right now, there is no court clerk. So it would provide backup to many different, instead of it being dedicated just to my department, I felt like it was better to spread the love.
Yes, Maddie.
Additionally, I'll point out that if Tara is sick, we have no city clerk. So it
Correct.
covers that as well.
Yeah, just if the board desires to go paperless by 2025, my department, it'll never happen. I need the help.
So if that, I'm sorry, and would that mean that we wouldn't need that person after we got
No,
paperless?
No, I'll still need them. It's, the demand in my department is growing to keep up with the day-to-day operations and keeping up with all the businesses and contractors, and the demand is just too high right now. I need a deputy. And overall, we need another person inside to help with all the departments in general, to help admin, to help finance, to help the building department, to help, engineering. We're gonna help them keep up with contracts. I mean, we have this year, I think right now we're at, what, almost 20 bids that we put out this year. It'll help Drew keep up with, I've already spoke with Drew. We're gonna have them contact all these contractors and make sure we get their contracts in line, get their workers' comp done, their employment verifications, assign their stuff, make sure that their bonds are paid on time. I mean, they're gonna be utilized more than just in the city clerk's office. It's gonna be utilized throughout the city. I really would appreciate having one.
Alderman Hoffman.
Could you just kind of outline what their day-to-day role is? What falls, what exactly does the deputy do?
Wow, everything. It would be tough to, I mean.
Well, that's not going to help justify it if you just say everything. I'm trying to lead this into a positive for you.
No, but it'd be tough. It would be anything from doing business licenses, contractor licenses, to, again, helping Drew with contracts, doing bid proposals, opening bids, helping do the mail, input, water bills, helping at the front counter, answering phones, everything from scanning in. We're doing it, we just went to emailing all of the contractor licenses out to all the contractors instead of folding them. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm bad.
Okay.
Leaning in, emailing all the contractor licenses out, and right now, I've probably gotten back 20 contractor licenses just today, and I'm expecting about 700 in the next, 6 weeks.
Do you know, does Lebanon have a deputy?
Yes, they do.
Does Lake Ozark?
Yes, they do. So does Eldon has one, Jeff City, all
Well,
of them.
when you brought this up at MML to Bob and I did start kind of going around and talking to other cities, and it seemed like that was a role that every city that we kind of compare ourselves to had filled. I'll just say that. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Alderman Ross.
So I want to clarify, I am not against a deputy clerk, okay? We used to have a deputy clerk, I get that, okay? But we haven't had a deputy clerk, all right? So something's changed, all right, that we need one, all right? And I understand the one time we need to become paperless, okay, got that, all right? But if in fact, for example, I'm just going to do some really quick math. At one point in time, we had 300 and some contractors licensing, $25 a head. That's like $6,800. Well, if we're spending $20,000 processing all of this stuff through some individual's salary and benefits, then we need to take a look at that. Okay, if we have. Personally, without going, I don't want to jump into this, but sometime we can talk about it again. I don't know why we have contractors' licenses here. I think that it's just a bureaucracy that provides no value. But we have to look at it that way. If we have twice as many contractors' licenses as we used to have, if we have twice as many bid proposals that go out and so forth, that's the kind of data that supports the fact that we have more workload, so we need more people to execute that workload. But I don't hear those numbers. I've started to hear for the first time, casually, for lack of a better term, in that conversation that you were doing. But that's the kind of information that makes it very easy to support those things. I'll leave it at that.
So is the consensus that we want to keep the deputy clerk, or do we want to get rid of it?
Yes.
Yes.
Keep it? Okay. Any other questions on 1004? Okay, 1005, city treasurer. This account absorbed a lot from 1013, so that's where you're going to see a lot of the lack of historical data.
Two questions.
Sure.
Two comments. One is, what are we doing to maintain that historical data? I have concerns with that since we're eliminating the department, we made a big push. I just want to make sure we don't lose some of that historical data, which is valuable.
Right. So we're required to keep the 1013 in there at least until it phases out of the budget book. So you'll see the 1013 fund there until 2028.
So we can go back to there if all of a sudden we want
Correct.
to get the data, we'll just have to go to two different places.
Correct.
Okay, that's acceptable. And the other thing is, I'm concerned that credit card fees, we were budgeting $5,000, but I see the revenue side on page 12 where we only budget $4,700 in revenue. So shouldn't I don't have any problem with, I know we've been down the road with these fees, but I see this a couple different places where our revenue is not being offset, our expenditure is not being offset by our revenue. Is that because it costs us X number of dollars no matter what, or did we just not track it well?
On the expense side, there's additional, our credit card processor charges a settlement fee every month that we can't pass on. And that's like a MasterCard Visa rule. And then there's also what our software company charges to have that online piece.
So basically, it costs us $250, cost of doing business.
Yes.
Just to have it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I was expecting it to be offset, but, okay. Thank you.
Go ahead. 2 questions. Once again, health insurance. Can you clarify the difference and the increase on the health insurance for that department?
I'm assuming maybe the new staff accountant has family coverage. I can't answer that for sure. It would be-
So when we estimate for new positions or vacant positions, we estimate at the family plan, which is the largest amount, at about $20,000.
That's about the difference.
This was drafted prior to Selena coming into the department and treasurer absorbing the AP payroll person fully from HR.
Okay.
So you're going to see that variance kind of throughout, because I know like sewer with the vacant spots, we had to estimate those at full dollar amount. And just, yeah, I think that's really the only variable is just vacant spots or if we have people switching roles without getting too specific on people's health elections.
My secondary question is, can you please clarify the budgeted $40,000 for financial services?
That's just fine.
Since we had not had a historical 5 years of
Right.
what does that entail?
So that was absorbed from 1013. That's for the audit and GASB and our first mid fees. That was all taken out of overhead before.
So it was in another part of the budget and being moved over to here.
Correct.
Okay.
It was in 1013 before.
Okay.
Back to the health insurance, So I understand why this 74,000 was here. It's also the fact that, we had April in the Treasury Department and now she's not, and she was less expensive on the health, all that. But I think, did I hear you say that this was prior to filling the positions? So now that the positions are filled, can we not take that number and put down the more realistic number? Because the realistic number is probably a little bit lower.
No, I would say that number is probably more realistic now.
Oh, okay.
Again, we can't get into the specifics of what people have elected for their benefits.
But but we can go ahead and make sure that now that we have that data of the actual people, make sure it is, maybe it's 71,000, maybe it's 76,000,
Yep.
but, okay.
Yeah, for those positions that are current positions that we can
Understand.
fill before the end of the year, yeah, we can go back and do that before final.
Make sure it's, okay.
Alderman Ross.
Devin, you mentioned 2 other things besides the audit. The audit, I understand. You said something about GASB.
Yeah.
What is that?
Can you explain GASB better than I can?
Yeah, it's general accounting standards, but it's just a piece of that audit. They do bill us separate, our auditors. and
Okay.
I can look up that
So it's part of the
exact-
audit. That's fine.
Yeah.
And what was the third thing that you
The
mentioned?
first mid fees,
What's first?
Which
That's
those
the
should-
banking?
the
fees?
banking
mid-bank?
fees.
Those
Okay.
should wash, but
All right, thank you.
right now.
Okay, any other questions on 1005? Okay. 1006, court, there wasn't hardly any change there, other than increase in salaries. And the municipal judge, contract extension and salary increase, which wasn't a whole lot. Any questions on 1006?
I do have a quick. Cole, I think he has a budget for outside litigation, correct?
Correct, that's in the
Is
1007
it-
account.
No, okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I wasn't sure where it was.
Yeah, this is the judge.
Yeah, we can move on to 1007
Yep.
if there's no questions on municipal court. Okay? Yes, he does have a professional services line item in there for $24,000.
Is that, did we set that at 24,000 and that's at his discretion to use, correct? That doesn't come to the board or anything, right?
Correct. That would
Okay.
be for outside help if he needs it.
Right.
Yes.
And he,
we just,
and he has complete autonomy to do that as he sees fits, right? He doesn't have to come to the board for
He has to
it.
come to the board for the RFP to hire somebody.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Thanks.
Alderman Ross.
So along that line, what do we expect those services for court services, for him in municipal court versus other courts?
it could be for doesn't necessarily have to be for court. It could be for a TIF if he needs assistance on any legal matter that the city gets into.
Well, TIF wouldn't matter because that's part of the funding agreement I was understanding, but, right? They pay for all the legal fees for the TIF up through the.
Correct.
Right, okay.
The only thing,
He's asking for assistance and to help him he's asking for assistant city prosecutor.
Outside counsel.
Right.
Right, that's what he's asking for currently is prosecutor.
Right.
But in general, it could be used for outside counsel.
Right.
Help on,
Anything
Any-
any additional
yeah.
legal he needs is what he's asking for.
the only thing is I would tell the board, I don't have it right in front of me, but I have it a little bit in my brain. If you go back to the purchasing policy, as a department head, he has the authority to spend a certain amount. And I don't know what that amount is. I think 5 or 10 grand. I don't know. What? 10? Okay. He has anything over, but so if he's going to spend more than 10, he's got to come back to the board. Or, excuse me, no, he has to go to Devin because she has the authority to spend up to 25. So he does not have the reins to just go.
Right, I was trying to figure
There's a little bit
out,
of check and balance there.
I was trying to figure out what was his maximum, you know, if he reaches it, he has to come back to Devin, then he has to come to the board. Because I know that just recently he did put it out there looking for some, right. So I just wanted to make sure that we were, you know, I just wanted clarification as to how much he was allowed to spend before we had to get involved, basically.
Well, and I'll just say this too, that prior to appointing Cole, I did a lot of checking of the municipalities around the area, and when I contacted Branson, back when they were doing their big expansion, I knew the attorney at the time. He made it very clear that they hired a separate prosecutor just because they're so busy working TIFs and everything else. So giving him the latitude to spend it, I think is.
Oh, yeah,
is fine.
I don't have any problem with that. I was just wondering what the amount was.
I get it.
And it, you know, it did happen to go out asking for ordinance help, you know, so the timing was a little weird on all that. So that's all I needed. Thanks.
any other questions on 1007? Okay, moving along to 1008. Building
Ron,
inspection.
what's abatement? Code enforcement abatement? I should know that.
So yeah, that'd be, like we had a house that burnt a few years ago, well, several years ago, and she couldn't
okay.
take, yep.
I should know that because I'm the one who.
If there's
pushed it
something
to
we
be
don't
in
get
there.
response on and the community wants it taken care of, we have the authority to go in.
Yeah, and we usually plan on getting that back.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions on 1008? Okay. 1009, building maintenance. The janitor position was added. We did add in 10,000 to professional services, or janitorial service for the overlap between when we would hire the janitor and, you know, between the first of the year and when that janitor's hired.
So it's costing us $24,000 to have a janitor in-house next year. And the following year is going to cost us $14,000 to have a janitor in-house, over and above what we have been spending. Because if you look at the fact that the janitor cost is going to cost us about 54 grand, and by the time you look at benefits and et cetera, and then supplies is, well, actually supplies is on top of that, and we were paying $40,000 for the service. Now, I realize the service wasn't quality. I'm not going to get into that. That's not my argument. I just want to make sure we're all clear that, you know, and next year, because we have that rollover, if you hired a janitor at the first of the year, which you're not going to hire him January 1, but it would cost us an additional $24,000 next year. If you hire him 2 or 3 months down, it's going to take the cost down, but even after that, it's going to still cost us $14,000 more, even though we're expected to get better service. I'm not arguing that.
Correct, and then, of course, we do the health benefits at the highest, you know,
Right.
rate, so, you know, it could be savings there as well.
It could be something less. I understand that.
Which I would say that the quality of what we're getting now is part of the argument, because
Oh,
that person we have in-house is going to be able to be directly influenced by
I'm
Ron.
not arguing that, I'm just looking at the dollars and cents, and that's why I said it. The quality is, but we have to look at the beans before we look at the other one.
But also, that 54,000 includes an existing employee. Did you notice that? I mean, we already have an
Oh,
employee.
yes, but I didn't take that as my 54. I took the amount for the janitor, which I took that and the benefits and the health insurance and all
Okay,
that.
I was just-
That's where I came up with my 54,000.
Okay.
Alderman Osteen?
Building improvements, can you please clarify or remind us what we had approved for 2025?
So a couple of these are carryover. So the first one is the 7,500 ceiling and striping of the back parking lot. And then the Veterans Memorial was budgeted out of this budget, so that's a carryover because it won't be completed this year. The only things that were added was an IT workstation for $1,000. The men's restroom in the basement needs a replacement light. Those are the only two, and it's $1,450.
Okay. Just to clarify. Thank you.
Correct. Any other questions on 1009? Okay. 1010 is parks.
A couple of, first of all, I'm confused on salaries. I thought we were pretty well, I don't know what we budgeted this year, if we budgeted, I thought for 100%, but maybe not, but basically the salaries went up 18.5%. I can justify 6.5%, and where I come up with 6.5% is 2.5% for the cost of living and about 4% merit. And I realize that's just a swag on merit. So I can justify the most of 6.5%. So there's 12% there that I want to just make sure we didn't make a mistake.
I believe where the difference is accounted for there is we are budgeted for 4 seasonal parks tech, and we did not have those fully in place for the entirety of the year this year.
So basically.
And we were down at Park Tech at the time of this.
Basically, 2024, we only budgeted for not the full staff, and now we're budgeting for the full staff.
I don't know what they did last year, but this was the number I got, estimating those at full staff for the year.
All right, I'm okay with that. I knew that's an issue. Maddie, you missed my spiel at the beginning about all that, so. The other thing is, vehicle, okay? If you go down to operating capital, and you go down to 2024 budget, we budgeted 49,000 for vehicles. One of those was for a truck, because I went all the way back to my budget. In fact, I have it right here, the budget from '24. One of those was for a truck. We bought that truck, I'm gonna go off my brain here because I've got it somewhere in my stack of paperwork. We bought that truck in May. So we bought that truck, but it doesn't show that we paid for it in his spreadsheet here, because it shows that the only money we spent in 2024 was $563. So someplace, there's a pickup truck that we bought charged to somebody's budget that it shouldn't be.
That's a typo. I'm changing it right now.
It's a typo, or
what
you
is it?
just,
The typo. I think I put what was the remaining budget and not what was actually spent.
So what are the correct numbers and where?
48,649.
so we did buy it, and, okay, so that's going to change some numbers, obviously.
Yes, it is.
Okay. 48 and some change, okay. And then on the concession, we're now only budgeting $3,000 for it. Excuse me, we're only budgeting 3,000 in expense, but we're budgeting more than that in revenue. Are we doing something different with the concessions? Because you got supplies for concessions down to 3,000. I just want to make sure the revenue, when I went to the revenue side, it didn't support it, or what are we doing with the concession? Maybe that's the easiest way to say.
Well, the RFP for the ball field contract, ball field management contract and concession stand contract was posted Friday. So we did not budget enough, and help me out here, Devin, in April, assuming that we will award the contract to somebody, is we budgeted as if nothing was going to happen last year, and we had all of that money in there that we never used. So I was trying to be conservative this year that we weren't going to need it. So it was down from, I think it was 12 or 13,000 last year.
So you've budgeted very little to buy stuff, but you've budgeted nothing on the revenue side to bring it in because we don't know what's going to happen with the contract?
Correct.
Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
So once we award, if we award the contract, or if we don't award it, one way or another, these numbers will have to be adjusted, because if we don't award the contract and we choose to do the concession ourselves, then we will have to have more money for supplies, and then we'll offset that with revenue. So one way or another, those numbers, we've got to come back to them
They will have to be
and do
adjusted.
something with them. Okay.
Yes.
I'm all right with that, just understanding. Thank you, that's all I had.
There's a lot of unknowns with the
Oh, sure,
contract right now. Yeah.
I just want to make sure the juggling's got to happen once we figure out which way we're going.
Alderman Hoffman?
Yeah, did we, is it in here to, budgeted to pave the road down through the dog park?
No, it is not.
Okay. I still want to do that. Does anybody, what does the board think? I thought we had gotten to a point where we were all supporting that. I mean, I remember Alderman Rucker saying that that was something we should have done years ago to get it down there.
I think Drew has some numbers that he can share.
Yeah, I'm looking for the numbers right now. I've looked at the numbers. I've looked into an estimate, rough back of the napkin. Sorry. And let's see. I had for just paving the road, I think you could probably pave the road for about 200,000. If you wanted to pave the road and the parking lot right in front of the dog park, it'd be about 275,000. That's assuming a pretty stout cost for the asphalt, and I think a reasonable depth to give it the right kind of structure. I talked with Rob Long from Transportation, and he seemed to think that the road and the parking lot was in pretty good condition, and we could probably pave primarily on top without doing a lot of extra site work. That'd be my estimate right now.
Is
Okay.
that something that we would like to add? If it is, that's going to make, we'll dip right back into reserve on that.
I would like to have that done. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks. I think it's important. We just, we built this brand-new, beautiful dog park. It's getting lots of traffic. And when you drive down there, it turns into a dust storm. And I think this is something that I just firmly believe it needs to happen.
Alderman Ross?
So Drew, could you clarify again the parking lot aspect of this? I know the road down to there. I
So-
think I understand that. We're talking about the parking lot in front of the maintenance shed?
No.
No, in front of the dog park.
And yeah, in front of the dog park. Between the dog park and soccer field, I guess that's number 2, there's a sizable parking lot.
That's already currently paved?
No, it's gravel.
Okay.
Everything, I think, and Eric can speak on this, but I think everything past the parking lot that services the playground is gravel.
That's correct. So you make your way past soccer field 1 and 2, in between soccer field 2 and 3, where the dog park currently is, there is a large gravel parking lot. And then continue past 3 to the maintenance area, there's a parking lot for the maintenance shop as well.
And so I always supported because you did a great job getting extra funding or help and so forth. So let's just say that the dog park we set it up as temporary in case we wanted to use it for something else. If we pave this now And we would not be probably taking that up if we just wanted to make those fields soccer fields.
It would be a parking lot for soccer fields now.
Right.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't be, if we sometime in the future could afford to do something with those fields, we wouldn't be probably removing that parking lot, right?
Oh, absolutely not. And-
Okay, all right, and the difference between the two was about 75,000? Did I do the math quick there?
Yeah, that's, I mean, yeah, rough back of the napkin based on some historical data, but yeah.
I have no particular concerns with it. I'm not sure how we're going to fund it, but if we can fund it and make the reserves reasonable, I'm okay. I have some ideas on how we can do that, but we'll do that later.
Alderman Osteen.
I think we'd be better served bringing this issue back up again after we've got a revised draft 2. So let us know where we stand with bottom line projected numbers. I'm on board with that, Justin, but let's not add more costs while we're trying to whittle down costs at this juncture. So perhaps something we circle back to after we get a revised next draft and kind of see where we're at with the hard numbers and whether it's feasible or not with revenue, reserves, et cetera.
I would support that as well, because that was my thought when we go through this. Rather than trying to add costs or rather trying to cut costs, let's get a good understanding of what's here. And I just would follow that up with, Devin, we need to have some understanding, or you need to have a good understanding on where we can and can't spend CIT. I'm not going to say I want CIT to pay for that, but I do, okay? But there's two things with CIT. One is what can we legally do, and the next thing, what does the board want to do? But so that would be an area that I'm sure at a later point of discussion, we would have to have that answer.
Alderman Elfin.
Yeah, I know there's usually a lot of resistance from the board to spend CIT money. I do think this kind of hits it for everyone because it doesn't hurt the future if we want to turn it into soccer fields down there. We are only doing half of it. You know, hopefully a year later we can do the rest of the road all the way down to the maintenance shed. That was kind of what Eric and I were talking about, to try and break the cost up a little bit. You know, but I think this is a good usage of CIT money if that's what it ends up being. But I appreciate you guys just supporting it enough to not kill it. Appreciate that.
So I did want to make a clarification. So the paving of Hatchery Road would be from where it turns to gravel right now, just past the last paved parking lot, all the way to the box culvert that spans the creek. And then the 75,000 would be for the parking lot between the two soccer fields. Just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page.
What was the price for everything?
275,000 for the whole road and the parking lot.
All the way down to the culvert?
All the way down to the box culvert, yes.
275?
Oh, that goes all the way to the bridge?
At 475.
Yeah.
275.
I gotta get my
Okay.
drainage fixed.
I thought the original plan was only to go to the
Hey,
soccer
now's
field.
when you don't say anything else.
Yeah.
But go ahead if you want.
No, let me turn this mic off, we're good.
I can give you a per linear foot estimate, but that's, I don't have my calculations right here in front of me, but I can certainly supply a per linear foot estimate if that's what you guys want to see.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize there was icing on the cake, my bad.
Electric, I noticed the electric, not a big deal, but we took the Christmas tree lights away. Is that going to save you some money on electric? Just rethink it. I mean,
In
you didn't-
theory, I don't know a very
I mean-
noticeable amount. I mean, I guess if you go back and compare.
$5,000 we spend on
Yeah.
electric? So that's $5,000 you could take out of there. Instead of 20s, it's 15. $5,000 is $5,000.
That being said, with the new contract, depending on how many tournaments are scheduled for the weekend, our electric bill could go up too.
But
So,
that's going to be more revenue.
More revenue, correct,
So
yes.
you just need to,
We will be presenting to the board our update request to our ordinance for our ball field rental fees too in December. We're probably 8 or 9 years out of date compared to where they should be, so we'll get a little bit more revenue coming in that way as well. In reference to the dog park, and then I won't say anything else, I expected it to be busy. I was extremely surprised how many people are using that thing. It is very popular.
Good.
Very popular through the week as well. It's like a parade of cars all day long, on and off. Alderman Hoffman can testify to that. He's been down there quite a bit, and I know the mayor has and others, so please take that into consideration.
Are you talking about the amount of traffic coming down there? Yeah, it's more than I thought it would be, to be honest with you.
Very good.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions on 1010 Parks Department? I don't want to backtrack and start a deal, but I should have asked for clarification. Is everybody on board with the janitor's position? Keeping it in? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to 1012, Human Resources. Any questions on that one?
I would just ask you to just recheck your calculations on your FICA and your retirement, because on your FICA, I figure you should be having budgeted $10,397. So maybe my calculator is screwed up, but I would tell you to just recheck that.
Okay.
I've got one question.
Alderman Osteen.
Insurance, once again. I'm confused on the line item on the insurance, property and liability with no historical, and suddenly there's 240
That was
plus
absorbed from
thousand.
1013 as well.
Okay, just to clarify.
Tevin, would this be a good time to go back to page 5 since we,
Do you guys
Have
want to
Maddie
talk
here?
to Maddie about the?
I mean, while we're on
personnel?
HR, we had a lot of questions about page 5. And we just kind of, we were going to wait till Maddie got here. Would this be a good time is my question.
Basically, what our questions was overtime and holiday pay, I think, wasn't it?
Well,
Workers'
there were
compensation.
And
three.
work comp, yeah. Those 3 items.
Overtime, holiday pay, workman's comp.
On page 5?
So Maddie, I kind of spearheaded 3 questions on this category, this page. So we'll start with the easiest first.
My page 5 is different than that. Hang on.
The middle bottom. of the
Page 7, if you're scrolling.
There we
There.
go.
So
Okay.
the easiest one to answer is workman's compensation, budgeted 211,400 for this year, estimated year end 182,810, only budgeting 93,274. Are we just keeping our fingers crossed that we're going to have half the amount of workman's compensation claims? Was there some kind of large claim we're unaware of in 2024 that the numbers were double what we're projecting for 2025?
The 2024 didn't meet the projected because I ended up going back and calling them out on a bunch of errors and getting us a bunch of money back. And I believe that's what I'd figured into estimating 2025 as well, because it was estimated way too much on the high end. I don't entirely know that for sure. I'd have to look at the calculations on that again.
But anytime there's an increase, decrease over 50%, obviously, that raises red flags on justification.
understand. I
So if you can
don't have a
circle
good
back to
answer
that
for you right
at the
now.
next meeting, that'd be great. Moving up that list, holiday pay.
Mm-hmm.
I think we somewhat answered this with how holidays fall in 2025, so therefore there'll be additional holiday pay. But once again, looking at what we had budgeted versus year end versus what we were budgeting for 2025, it seemed like an exorbitant increase over 2024 year end projected versus next year. Really $110,000 in holiday pay, even if it's one additional holiday, I don't see $110,000 of overtime being paid for all of our employees.
Well, in that holiday pay, that's only including ambulance, PD, dispatch, and airports, and that is estimating it at a full staff. So I can't guarantee off the top of my head again that it would be at that 197,330 without going and double checking my math, but that was an estimation at full staff.
So.
The previous year wasn't at 100%? The 172?
This year, we haven't been at 100%.
Was not at 100%, this is 100%.
No, I mean, we functioned most of the year, Chief, what, at almost half personnel down in dispatch? Right about there?
Possibly, yeah.
We were
I
functioning-
estimated our holiday pay for communications at 26,000, 26,700.
So I can
this year.
double check math, but I don't have a good answer for you off the top of my head.
if you could, because once again, we're projecting an 80,000 year end and 197,000 budgeting for next year. I can't seem to wrap my head around the mathematics on that.
Yeah.
And last but not least, overtime pay. One of the biggest issues or concerns we have, and questions basically, is as we get fuller to capacity with staffing levels for all departments, we do not or cannot quite fathom why we're still increasing overtime pay. It seems as we increase staff, the requirements for overtime pay should be decreasing, yet we are significantly increasing for next year how we are projecting overtime.
So the way I was calculating overtime was functioning off of the spreadsheets that Gina had provided me before she left. They had flat amounts per pay cycle for all of the public works departments, and then there were percentages for dispatch, ambulance, PD. I'm assuming they were estimating on the higher side, again, so that if we do meet our maximums, we're not under budgeting. I'm functioning off of historical data on that one and kind of rolling with the punches to see what the year brings. But I don't have a good answer beyond that without prior knowledge.
I can't wrap my head around it. I don't know if any other members of the board want to speak to this either. I just can't
I
justify.
will. There's just no way to justify it mathematically. If you're adding personnel, that should be decreasing overtime hours. So I don't know whose responsibility that is to do a deep dive into it, but it needs to happen because those just don't jive.
Well, it sounds like what's being done is what I said. They took last year's data and just figured that next year it's going to be more. Well, last year's data was based on less staffing. What needs to be done is you need to throw away 24's information on overtime and look at it realistic on what you expect 25 to be, and take the historical data and realize that that is not at 100% staff, because now we are saying it's 100% staff. You budget 100% staff, you have less staff, and you end up with more overtime, and the amount of extra overtime should be offset by the reduction in the salary. And that's where we're catching ourselves here. We're budgeting for 100%, but we're taking and not taking a good look at the overtime.
It's probably not one-to-one, but whatever the man hours that you're adding, that should affect how many overtime hours are out there. You know, if it's a 3-to-1, you know, something like that, there probably is, you know, equations out there for municipalities somewhere. I would think that as you add this much staff, your overtime hours decrease by 20%, something like that. I don't know, but I agree with Alderman Rucker. I think that is what was done here. Is you just kind of moved it forward and it inflated the numbers. I think it's that simple. But
Sounds like you got a test, Evan.
Yes.
I would also add on the overtime, it doesn't matter how many staff you add at Public Works, assuming that we don't make any kind of improvements or upgrades, if the number of call-outs are the same, like if the number of customer call-ins are the same every year, if we pay people more, the overtime is going to go up every year. Like just broad, if you get 100 calls every single year, but you pay people more, the overtime's always going to go up. Where I think ours is just a slightly different, where if you keep adding more people, it's irrelevant. If everybody goes home at 3:30, it's just kind of rolling the dice of how many calls actually come in.
Well, I think I mentioned that earlier, that the call-out stuff on those departments is something that you can use historical data on, okay?
Yeah.
But when you're talking about backfilling because you are down in staff and you need a minimum amount of people, that needs to be looked at a little bit differently.
Also, to add to that, on the PD side, and I believe overtime is the same for Public Works, if they come in for an hour, they automatically get 3 hours because of the minimum call-in. On top of that, the police department, there's a revenue line item for it, is for grants, but we've got almost 340 hours overtime that's grants. That's also into that line item, but we do get reimbursed for that as well.
So it should be offset by the grant.
Some of it.
And it would be nice to have that data as part of this information here, to say this increase of $200,000 from 2024 to 2025 in our overtime budget is being offset by grant money or just filling in some more of the blanks. But, and Maddie, you did a great job. Obviously, a lot of this stuff, I think, like you stated before, you're going off historicals and equations you were given by predecessors. So just maybe circle back with us on the next meeting regarding the budget and kind of give us more clarity on some of this.
Will do.
Thank you.
I don't think it's as inflated as we maybe think it is, because I think there is a lot, Zach's right. You're still going to have these emergency calls. You're still going to be paying overtime. But that number looks like it's just too darn high. So I just think it's going to fall somewhere in the middle, but that's, good luck, Devin.
Alderman Ross.
Well, I was just going to say that we don't ever not want to plan for overtime, okay? I've seen that happen in an organization. What happens is people start not paying overtime, and that gets people into all kinds of huge troubles, okay? But the fact that in 4 years it's doubled is something that we just have, is a reality that I don't think anyone here can legitimately explain.
Well, if you were reducing staff, I might see that, but no.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Sure. And so, back to, I appreciate the word data being used, to be quite honest, Bob. It's those kinds of things that we need to understand. And I want to make sure that we do not put such an emphasis on overtime that people make poor decisions about how they try to pay people or work people off the clock and things like that, because I've seen that in the restaurant business many times. And, but at the same time, there's got to be some way to manage it better, given the fact that it's doubled so quickly, even though staffing has went up. And by the way, while we're on this general set, well, no, never mind, I'll get there in a second. I don't know what kind of vacancy rates we have in here, but go ahead, Bob, you finish. We just got to figure this overtime thing out. We don't have enough data. Things happen. We know, for example, and I'll just say this, we know, for example, that we have somebody working every Saturday and Sunday on at least sewer and maybe water. So we may need to look at some scheduling opportunities that are different, okay? Just because, pardon me?
Yeah, prioritizing calls. I mean, if the phone rings, they go in. There's no, we'll get to it Monday or.
I mean, I floated the
weekend
idea,
shift.
and one of the things that I spend a lot of time in, and others that have been in there in the restaurant business, is scheduling. How do you have the right people there at the right time? And the fact that we don't ever schedule anyone to work on Saturday or Sunday, it baffles me. I'll just be quite honest. So it ties into that overtime conversation. And I have ideas on that if somebody wants to talk about it, but not right now. It's not a good time. Go ahead. Sorry, Bob.
No. Ditto what he just said regarding scheduling. I think maybe that's more, if we were to look back, and I know this is probably a huge undertaking, to look back on the historical data on when are we paying overtime and what are the causes. Yes, obviously with Public Works, there's the call-ins, but if those call-ins that we're paying the overtime for are on Saturday evenings, then maybe we need to tweak our schedules, at least temporarily, to say, maybe we need to have somebody on staff on Saturday evenings to handle those so it's not considered overtime pay. It's standard pay and it's part of their 40-hour work week. I think there is some opportunity there. I don't know if departments each can individually go back and look and say, okay, when are we paying the overtime? Not just what are we paying? And see if there's some way we could try to negate some of that by just trying to tweak the scheduling.
If I could.
So, Alderman Hoffman.
I realize it's tough on department heads to have to go to their employees and to basically, it's hard to tell them that they're not going to get overtime because they're probably starting to factor that into some of their, how they make a living. That's where I think the department heads have a responsibility to be fiscally responsible. The city doesn't just shut down on the weekends. That is just part of the truth. And, it's coming from a board directive. So we're the bad guys in this, not the department heads. We're basically saying that we have to be fiscally responsible about overtime. Blaming us is totally legitimate because that's the direction that we all think it needs to go.
Alderman Rucker.
I think there's a lot of data, Mr. Ross, a lot of data that needs to be gathered before we make the decision to put our people working Saturdays and Sundays. I think the collection of that, the work orders you're doing, the process you've asked for to help figure out if some of these calls can't be moved into the week rather than being called out on the weekends. Some of those things are some information that could help us help you make that decision.
But it sounds like Alderman Rose.
I don't know if this would even be practical or possible, but just thinking as an idea of rotating the people's scheduling, you know, as far as with the employees that say one person, okay, gee, once a month I've got to work Saturday and Sunday, but I get off 2 days during the week. I'm just, don't know your, you know, your operation, but just a thought.
All right, so as far as page 5, you're going to do some research on that before the next, and any other questions on page 5 before we move on? Alderman Ross?
So down at the bottom of, I guess it's page 5, but where the personnel schedule, if you will, where it talks about the number of or full-time and part-time, there's a footnote that says that this does not include FTE totals. Is that the case for the entire, all of that? I couldn't find where the double star went to.
Where are you at, Richard? I'm sorry.
At the very bottom, under total personnel authorized,
Page,
I don't know what page it is. I got so confused on that.
Page 6.
Oh, you're back at page
6
6?
is 60.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. It's 5 and 6 kind of come together, so maybe if we, is that okay to go to that page?
Sure.
Okay. So is that just something that got carried over from something else?
This is on the personnel schedule that I emailed out.
Yeah. That's the only one that I know that we have, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they're looking in the book to find it, and it's not in there.
Sorry?
It's not in the book that was published as draft 1. I emailed it out separately.
Okay.
Right, right. So I'm asking if that footnote is what does that mean?
At the bottom, Maddie, where it says this does not include FTE totals, full-time employee totals.
Yeah.
Full-time
employee totals.
equivalent, yes.
So these are full-time equivalents on this page, or they're not? And if not, is it all of them, or what? And if you don't know, that's okay.
To be honest, I don't even know what full-time equivalent means.
So if you have one part-time employee that works 20 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, then that's a .5 employee, a .5 full-time equivalent.
Okay.
Okay.
So then, yes, this sheet does include full-time equivalents.
It's the next page.
So if you're comparing one year to the next, the full-time, and the previous year's full-time equivalents is a total, this year's the same, is that right? You're comparing apples to apples?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, all right. And Maddie, from a vacancy standpoint, do you have any perspective on how vacant we were this year compared to, in other words, were we 30% vacant in positions or total hours or something? I mean, one of the challenges we're having here is that this is a different approach, okay? That we're gonna budget for everyone to work, you know, every position to be filled January 1st through December 31st. And if we want to do that and create a slush, I don't have a passion, but I don't understand what real effect that has on the budget. Do we have any idea? Is that a, you know, $1 million decision? Is it a $100,000 decision? Is it a $10,000 decision? Do you have any idea?
I don't have the data right now to give you an intelligent answer on that.
Can you get that to us reasonably easy, or is that going to be a huge
That's
undertaking?
going to be me fishing through the 6 months of data maybe somewhere from before I took over the role.
The data. So that sounds like that's a huge undertaking.
I don't know what that would entail at this time.
Right, you can't, okay. All right, very good. That's all I have.
Are we ready to move back into the funds?
Yeah.
Okay. Didn't anybody have any additional questions on 1012, which would be human resources? Okay. 1013, that's blank for, does give projected year-end numbers, but all of those were absorbed into other departments, as we had discussed. 1014 is police. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I think the biggest thing we've had there, we've delved into is the fact of how many people are we budgeting for, and 100%, and that's what's really driving those numbers there. That's what's driving the big change in the police.
So maybe, could I ask one question then, because maybe I've lost perspective. Todd, how many people short are you in the police department right now?
One full-time officer and one records clerk. And that's just police. Okay.
Understand? The 911?
3.
So that means you have, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember, do you have a total of 11?
Yes.
In 911?
Correct.
So you have 8 people?
Yes.
In 911? Okay, and Drew Sewer? I'm sorry, not Drew. Zach, excuse me. Sewer? How are we staffed now?
2 in sewer, 1 in street.
I'm sorry?
2 in sewer, 1 in transportation.
We're short 2 in sewer and 1 in transportation.
One's in the pipe, though.
'Cause I apologize for asking all that, but I almost got the perception we were a lot less staffed than what you all just described. And so I just want to make sure I got that squared away in my head. Thank you.
Yes?
I do have one question. As you know, I had a personal project for the police department, and that was the assessment for the call center, EMT, and police department. Did that make the cut? And
Did
that's-
not.
It did not make the
It
cut?
was ranked number 4, and none of them in general fund made the cut at all.
So nothing that we had ranked, discussed, made the cut for budgets for 2025?
So number 1 ranked in general fund was the Phoenix Park Pavilion with the attached restrooms, which was a little over $1 million. Eric is applying for an LWCF grant. Those funds won't be received until '26. So I did not budget it. We will attempt to budget it next year once he receives the grant. Number 2 that was ranked, and it was actually tied for number 1, was the 911 dispatch relocation down to the basement, which was $440,000. So the study was number 4, so it had another project in between it. And
Okay.
we didn't have, general fund's already maxed out.
I know. Well, one of the concerns I had, and once again, it was a pet project, was the study would have helped us decide whether we actually needed to move the 911 center, whether we needed to increase from 2 workstations to 4, whether, you know what I'm saying, whether we were at the correct staffing levels, et cetera. So I think I talked to Todd about this, saying, hey, they approved that. We've had a few things, in the police department that we discussed and approved, but obviously the assessment would have been helpful to have done before we pulled the trigger and spent money to move something like the call center to see if that was even feasible or something that we really need to happen.
Right.
So,
I
but
think
none of it made the cut, so.
I think we'd figured that we were going to try to go through this and then at the end, start campaigning for what we wanted to add to it or take out. Not that I don't support you.
I know. You
Hold-
ranked it number 1 as well. Thank
Hold
you,
your
sir.
argument. We'll go to battle hopefully later.
Alderman Ross?
Along that line, as I recall, that there was choose between the two, a 400,000 for the 911 or a
83.
75 or $80,000
83.
something that
Correct.
somehow I got the impression we couldn't really live without that one. Am I wrong about that?
I have asked Chief to talk to Lexi and see if that's something that,
I'm still waiting on an answer from her.
okay.
Haven't, she's been
right.
kind of busy.
Yep.
Alderman Monroe?
How much was the cost again if they moved the dispatch downstairs?
440,000.
430,000?
440,000.
Yeah.
440.
Correct.
Or 83.
Really?
Yes.
Or 83,000 to upgrade equipment at the existing location.
That's staggering.
Yes. 911 centers are not cheap.
Or the assessment says we don't need to do anything. Har.
I didn't think I heard correctly, but thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on police department? Okay. 911 center,
Look at all these, I know.
any questions on that? Okay. Next is planning, 1016. Yes, Alderman Rucker?
Mr. Patterson's not here, but are we giving him a cut in pay? Because we budgeted 98,000 for this year, and we're taking his pay down to 97 next year. We cutting his pay? I think somebody needs to look at
Think
that.
that's a bad idea?
Somebody needs to look at those numbers.
Okay. Maddie, will you take a look at that one?
Along that line and Ron, you might know, at one point in time, it was shared, the administrator was, in 2024, was any of that shared, do you know, if that might be part of the reason? It looks like 24 was when it was supposed to drop out, maybe.
Yeah, I can't tell you for sure when they decided, when they made that actual change, but
Okay.
I thought it was the previous year, but
Yeah.
we just need to look at it. kind of stuck out.
Thank you. We will look into that.
2024.
So it,
I don't know the exact date, I just.
it appears
On the
that,
previous personnel schedule, yeah. For 2023, it was 1.5. 2024, it went down to 1 for planning department, so
so, yeah, you guys need to just,
We'll double check that one. Yep. Any other questions on 1016? Okay, 1018 is engineering. The 2 construction inspectors are budgeted in here along with all the supplies. I did remove the vehicles. We will try, later on, there is a Public Works truck that will be phased out. We will take that one and then borrow one of the police vehicles that's on schedule to be replaced.
Alderman
So-
Osteen.
I think in light of all the discussions and issues we're having regarding personnel, salaries, et cetera, even though we were all on board with adding 2 additional inspectors to the staff, I think we do better serve cutting that to 1. And basically, instead of going ahead and budgeting and approving 2, let's do 1 and see if there is a need for a secondary. That obviously would help us considerably in personnel costs. And it's something we can circle back to later in the year if we figure out that we do need an additional.
So we did already pass that ordinance to add 2 in the last board meeting.
we haven't hired them yet, and we can sure change that ordinance.
Yeah.
I would also caution if we only do 1, Devin and I talked about a pretty healthy slash of the construction inspection on-call fee that we're being charged by Cochrane. I would assume that cannot, we'll be coming back later in the year if that number stays the same and asking for an adjustment on that, because I don't see that we can cut both, essentially. And I don't know where the tipping point is. I don't know if 1 is the better option and doing mostly contract inspection. But if you cut 1, we won't be able to cut the other as much, so.
I think one of the concerns is we're going from a 0 to 2 with no history or historical regarding it. And
Yeah,
therefore, I'm
so-
saying let's do maybe a little caution and at least get at least 1, and then we can always come back later in the year and say, yes, we are warranted for a second. That's just my personal opinion.
That's two trucks to 1 truck, too.
Alderman Rucker.
I have a problem supporting these 2 inspectors. I concur. I have a problem with the fact that, that we're not able to reduce the cost of what we're budgeting for Cochrane and budgeting for professional services in general by the fact of 2 people coming on board. Those people coming on board, that person coming on board, if it takes them more than a couple months to hit the ground running and start doing it, we've hired the wrong people. They don't need to take that long to get themselves on board to be able to be qualified themselves to make those inspections. I have a real strong problem supporting it. I support 1, and if we don't think that that's going to make a difference, maybe we don't need to have any, and we just continue to hire it out. Maybe that is a cheaper way to do it. I also have a real big problem with the professional services, with the fact that we went from 300,000 up to 500 this year, and now we're still only going down to only 394 next year. I think we uncovered some things tonight about the fact that we're projecting the rides to be inspected by an outside service. That's not going to occur. We should be expecting some of the services down there to be done by our staff, and that is not reflected there. I think we've cushioned that way too much, and I have a real strong problem supporting that in those areas. I think that the other area that I have a question about is in gasoline. Folks, we're going to hire 2 people, we're going to inspect, and we're going to spend $10,000 for gasoline. Now, I went to building inspections and we have 2 inspectors there, and they've been working their tush off this last year, doing a lot of inspections. We're estimating that expense to be $4,000 of gasoline. There's an error there somewhere or another. Why are we spending $4,000 for 2 inspectors that are really out there doing a lot of inspecting, and we're saying $10,000 for these 2 inspectors? So there's some areas there that I think needs addressed in the engineering budget. Thank you.
So the engineering department is going from just myself to having myself, a GIS technician who's a field employee, the utility locator who is a field employee and spends, I think, what, 90% of his time out in the field at least? And then also the 2 construction inspectors is the way we budgeted. So we budgeted $2,000 a year for each employee to have gas.
How many you got? You've got 2 inspectors and a GPS guy.
The GIS, and the utility locator.
That doesn't come out of your budget.
Yeah.
How many staff comes out of that budget?
5. There's 5 total. It's switched. 2 construction inspectors, a GIS technician, the utility locator, and Drew.
So do those other 2 inspectors, that fuel get taken out of the budgets for those other departments?
Haven't.
The utility locator was the only one that was transferred. The GIS tech was already in the engineering. So yes.
So we already paid for the fuel for the gas. Well, I don't need to get down nitty gritty. I'll let you get down there, but that's not justification for that $10,000 yet for me.
Alderman Osteen.
I also have some concerns regarding the fuel, and with the discussion of adding the additional staff to the department, I don't understand where the vehicles that we had discussed for purchase fall into the budget, because this shows capital for vehicles of 0. So it's fallen under a different category?
We're not buying them.
We're not going to buy them. We're going to use the public works truck that they're going to replace and then a PD Interceptor.
Okay, I missed that somewhere in the conversation.
Yeah. No new vehicles. We're going to take them from another department and not sell them to save them money.
Okay.
Alderman Ross.
So my concern, to be quite, is echoed, but I'm going to kind of dig a little deeper, like Kevin said, around some of the investment that we're making for the inspectors, but yet we're still utilizing professional services at a level that's much higher than, to be quite honest, at the same level that we already have, okay? That's what it looks like. Now, am I wrong in that?
So
I think we can reduce that number back to 200,000. That's what I would propose.
Cut it in half.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that sure helps.
Yes.
But
No,
go
go
ahead. No, that's all right, finish.
The only thing I was going to say was after Drew does all the calculations on the Cochrane bills, we employ 4 full-time employees at Cochrane. So with those hours, if we can employ those people internally, we are going to save a ridiculous amount of money
And we're
employing 4
getting that
people.
much in revenue from inspection fees?
I'm sure we're not.
Then we need to be looking back at our inspection fees are way too low. We should be getting that back in inspection fees, maybe not 100%, but a large amounts. I'm sorry, Richard, you had
No,
the
that's
floor.
okay. I'm just very honest, and I'm trying not to be critical, but facts are facts and perceptions are perceptions. We are spending too much money on Cochrane for inspections, okay? I've had reports, at least from one project, where Cochrane just, they're all day, okay? There's no reason for an inspector to be there all day in most cases, okay? I feel like that, and I understand change, different leaders. Drew, you're coming in, you're drinking out of a fire hose, but I would just ask that it looks like you guys are getting there quickly, and I appreciate that and I applaud you, but we need to get Cochrane under control, okay? I feel like they have a blank check.
And that's where a lot of this is stemming from. I took a first big, deep dive into these invoices and separating out the engineering and the construction inspection, and it felt like the construction inspection was on these developments was costing between, I think on average, about $28,000 to $35,000 a month in just inspection fees on the commercial development. And that was honestly before the engineering department started doing the infrastructure inventory inspections. I have not seen a great increase in these last months on that, but also commercial development has also been slowing down because it's the end of the year. Yeah, I think, yes, we can certainly take a harder look at the professional services specifically for construction inspection, and I think we can easily reduce that by quite a bit. I think 2 full-time employees could probably take up a large portion of what we're doing, but yes, we took a look at one particular invoice, and it's hard to pull out which employee on their bill is doing what thing as far as inspection or engineering. But yes, there are several full-time employees that we are basically employing and several part-time employees on top of that. I think there were, 12 total employees that are called out on those invoices, some being nearly 100% of a month for an hourly rate. So I think the construction inspection's something that we can easily reduce that total contract amount with them and bring it in-house and bring those decisions in-house too, because Cochran is out there with city authority, potentially giving city advice, et cetera, potentially without consulting anything but the city guidelines. And I think having those decisions in-house is also important.
Good. So do we have any expectations? So the contract for the outside inspection services from the company in Jeff City, I can't remember, is that Schifrin?
That's Barlow and West is doing.
Bartlett and West, okay, yeah, that's Bartlett and West. When we contracted for them, it was like I'm trying to understand the contract, because I remember approving it. Was that a contract where it's, okay, not to exceed some number, but we're just gonna use this is an estimate? Was it
It was a somewhat on-call sort of contract of.
Okay,
If you get called out, then you go and you do inspection for so many hours, and then, you leave.
right.
Which mirrors.
So we're not committed to spend any exact dollars with them, is that right? It was kind of an open
Which mirrors
contract.
what the Cochran bill is also structured as, is kind of like an on-call sort of structure, instead of a lump sum.
Because I heard a number somewhere close to $200,000 for that contract.
It was 194,000.
That was the
contract.
estimated total?
That's the not-to-exceed amount.
Yeah.
That's the not-to-exceed amount. And as I looked at that, I thought, we could park 2 people down there full-time for round numbers, $200,000. I can't imagine. Is this project, and you all know the plans better than I do, and I know you haven't seen all the plans. Is this a project where we're gonna need an inspector there full-time? In your all's mind, between you and Ron? I mean, we've never built a water
But
park or.
it's all commercial. It's all structured as that, commercial sort of inspection, just like, development of any sort of commercial property. So it all needs to be inspected. It all needs to be applying all the different codes that Ron would usually inspect, but
Sure,
it's
I understand
just-
that.
So, I mean, on days where they're just blasting, no. An inspector doesn't, and they aren't. And in fact, there's not been a lot of activity down there, and the bill currently reflects that. But if they're gonna be building a whole hotel, and there be, paving potentially, it's all a matter of inspection and enforcement and quality assurance and quality control. And from what I can tell and all the reports that I've had back, Brinkman, the prime, contractor on this site, has been doing great things, has quality in mind and everything, and I think is supposed to be getting some sort of, really outstanding safety award, which is great and great for the city. But the type and amount of infrastructure, especially in a very public-facing sort of enterprise that is, I think it would be best to keep that contract active and to make sure that inspection is being done all the way through, whether that be by city staff or by the consultant. And this couldn't be done by Cochrane because there was a, conflict of interest.
Right. Like, so I guess what I'm trying to ask is, I am not advocating that we terminate that contract and we don't use them. And basically, they're a backup. In a perfect world, if we had 2 inspectors on staff, January 1st, and assuming there was construction going on, which there may not be, but we would only need them if there was more work than those 2 inspectors could do. Is that correct?
Sure, or if there was some sort of specialty item that they didn't feel comfortable to inspect.
Okay, fair enough. There might be something fairly unique, but, and so what I was trying to understand is if you all had any perspective between you and Ron, because I realized that, is this the kind of, we've not built amusement parks and water parks in the city of Osage Beach, so this inspection thing is all new to everybody as far as that huge of a project. Is this a type of project that may need an inspector full-time or 2 inspectors full-time? Is it that kind of level of work there, or do you all have any perspective on that?
I would say no. I think daily, and this is, in my opinion, daily visits, yes. There all day? Absolutely not.
Okay.
And just to give a little background, I was involved in some of the calls, just trying to help Mike sort through some of the information. And originally, this contract was, we'll have you guys come down once or twice a week or as we call. Now, I was out of the conversations after that, and I will offer one thing for Cochrane. They will do whatever we ask, however little or however much. And I can tell you that the number of inspections and the hours out in the field increased drastically, as you can imagine, especially during erosion season. That caused a huge uptick in their time on at that time, I think we had 14 excavation sites, and they were visiting them all after every event, and then at least once or twice a week, and that was at our direction. But I think in saying that, with Drew on board, with full-time staffers in City Hall for construction inspections, that's something that can be looked at and reduced drastically.
Okay. Thank you. I'll just say that if we can reduce that $200,000, you all feel comfortable with that, then that, I guess he's in the restroom, that just about paid for some paving down in the parks. Move on. That's all I have. Thanks.
Alderman Rucker.
We need to look forward at the fact that if we think we're going to need an inspector full-time just to do the oasis, are we getting the right amount of revenue back?
Absolutely.
That's what we need to do, because I don't see that happening. Especially from what I see, the revenue coming in for the engineering services. So we need to up those services. We need to do something there to have more of an offset. I don't have a problem with us having to spend some, but I have a problem with the amount that we're doing here in a cost and the revenue not as like it should be. And I think that needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Alderman Osteen.
So what is the direction from the board for Devon? I personally am still not sold on 2 building inspectors. Yes, I understand that there would be revenue that we can offset or costs that we can be offset with having 2, but guess what? We don't have any kind of hard numbers. There's no guarantees. Yes, we can try to reduce our contracted services through Cochrane or through the backup services, et cetera, but until I see hard numbers, I'm not sold on it.
Well, I can get you the numbers. I've got a projected cost for just the construction piece over the last 2 months. I just got the newest Cochrane bill, and so I can project that out as far as what those services are costing. Yeah. And I can easily project out the Barcelona West bill. That's 100% construction. And I think I have a supplemental for the Anderson Engineering now doing business as own. There's a supplemental that's 100%. It's like $17,000 for just the Parkway Extension project, and those are the 3 consultants that we're using for construction inspection right now.
I mean, to cut it to bare bones, if we're going to spend $70,000 on a building inspector, well, I need to know that we're going to cut $70,000 worth of costs, and I don't see any numbers or anything that's giving me any kind of data that supports that. If we're going to spend $70,000 on a new staff member to save us $50,000, obviously, we're making the wrong decision. That's where, bottom line, that's where my head is at, is we talk about savings and how we can cut costs with third-party contractors for your department, but I've not seen any numbers to justify it.
So just in general terms, if we can assume $30,000 a month, that's $360,000 a year. And that's just with Cochrane. And the $17,000 on own, I think it's something like, I mean, and yeah, the construction inspection completely for Bartlett West, so that's $194,000 over 2 years. So let's, you know, let's make that 85,000. Quickly.
Alderman Ross?
I tend to agree, the general theme of what you're trying to say, Bob, but we do have to understand that there's some, you know, first year, I don't know that it's going to be a 1-for-1. It may be a 70% return because, you know, 30% of getting them up to speed, for lack of a better term. Year 2, it probably should be 1-for-1, if not, you know, if we spend $1 in inspection services, it probably ought to be a 1.3 to a 1.5 because of the markups and so forth that Cochrane's taking. But I will say, at least in year 1, it's not going to be a 1-for-1 probably. It may not be, depends on when we get them installed. And you know, this is almost the same conversation around vacancy. But yes, we can put 2 head counts in here, okay? I'm glad we're going to drop to 200. The probability that we're going to have 2 people that are inspectors employed January 1st is generally not probable, I don't think. And if they are, I'm not sure that you can get them both trained at the same time. So it's almost wonder that they should be staggered. This is one where I agree, Bob. Show us where the number's going to come back, and we can support the 2 inspectors. You went through a bunch of numbers, and if I could have followed you and tracked you, you might have just did that, but I can't track that fast with you, to tell you the truth.
No, you're fine. I just did the math really quick. Just as general numbers, they are not 100% accurate. Sure. But as far as trends go, there's $360,000 for a year for Cochrane inspection. Okay.
Okay, so hang on there, though. You're stating hiring 1 inspector is basically going to negate 100% of the work that Cochrane does for us.
No, all I'm saying is that this is how much we are spending a year potentially with consultants. So there's.
And is that for inspection services, or does that include design?
No, just construction.
Okay, just inspection services.
Just inspection.
Okay.
So, and I'm not going to stand behind these numbers, but these are, you know, just trends that I saw while looking at the most current bills.
Mm-hmm.
There's about $30,000 a month in construction inspection services just from Cochrane. So we'll take that at $360,000 a year. That's plus and minus, they obviously fluctuate. There's $17,000 from the last cost share project with Anderson Engineering. That we had a construction inspection supplemental to that contract, which was about $17,000. And if we assume that Bartlett West is going to do about half of their construction inspection in a year, we'll say that that contract is about $100,000. And that comes out to be roughly $475,000 a year.
Which is the number we're paying for contract outside services. But once again, we've got no correlation that hiring an inspector is basically going to negate all of that money per year.
No.
And that's what I'm trying to formulate my head around is, yes, you're giving us numbers, thank you, on what we're spending per month, but once again, hiring 2 or 1 isn't going to basically save us that money.
No, but even
I would like to have
hiring
some written data. This stuff that
Correct.
be delivered to us verbally is garbage. It's the same thing that happened before when during the process we were given stuff verbally and we can't follow it. I can't follow it. I'm not saying it's wrong information, but it's not information that can be digested. We need to have the stuff written down, provided to us so that we can look at it, so we can see and track it and to see if we can support it or not. Because these numbers that are being just given to us, we can't even add them up or whatever, you know, we need to have justification. And I can't justify it at all. I can't justify the fact that if we can't hire them both, we can't get by with just 1. You know, that information. No, don't tell me that. We can just get by with 1 if you have to. So there's a lot of written information that I'd like to see. We're wasting a lot of time here.
So
Alderman Hoffman.
Well, it seems like everyone likes Cochrane, but we all think that there is some serious savings that can be made in this. And I agree, for the most part, I agree with everything you said, Bob, but I also think that if you want to really dig into this and you want to give Drew a chance to really cut into them, then you got to roll the dice and get both people in here. I still lean that direction.
Alderman Ross.
So as a suggestion on how we can move forward, let Devin says she can cut $200 out of, or $200,000, out of professional service. Let Drew do some work and let him bring it back and show where the savings are, okay? I don't know whether $360,000 what we're spending now, if two inspectors can pretty much carry that load, and I don't know, and I'm not, but that's easy math to me. 2 inspectors don't cost $360,000 a year even with benefits. So, frame the conversation like that as you come back so that it's easier for us to support.
Will do.
Sounds good.
Any additional questions on 1018, engineering? Okay, 1019 is IT. Any questions on that?
Alderman Ross.
So what is driving the maintenance and support services that are, for lack of a better term, around 25 or 30% higher?
Using forward slash, I think.
Michael, did we combine some of the 1013 maintenance and support in 2 years?
We did.
The overhead line
What's
item?
1013, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, that's the overhead that we're
The budget
getting
line
rid
that
of.
we eliminated. So some of that 349 you're saying came from the other budget?
Pretty sure.
The other,
Yeah, we got rid of the maintenance and support from 1013.
So how much was that, do we know?
That was only about 5,000.
true.
Not much.
So this was the new contract that was brought for the first reading last week, was part of that.
Oh, this includes
additional
that?
cost.
But that was cheaper than the Ford/contract.
No. It was additional cost.
Proposal.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up. Give me 1 second, please. Oh, I'm good. All right, so that consists of lots of different stuff, so it's not just real easy for me to say, oh, it's this, because it's literally every piece of software that we do. We're speaking about maintenance and support. That was your question, right?
To start with, yes, I got another one, go ahead.
So let's see what we have projected here. So we had projected 382,000. We dropped that by cutting a few different things, server maintenance and support, and the $85,000 security package that / had asked us to pick up that I decided not to do until we ended up figuring out exactly where we were headed direction-wise. So that's what Alderman Barella was speaking about, their overall cost. So for 349,000, the projected year end is exactly what I just said about what was cut, not the 85,000, and 2 server maintenance line items that equaled about $40,000. And then if I pull up the
Are those unique to this coming year, or are they going to be annually needed?
those 2 are going away completely. So the server maintenance and support line items are gone.
Oh, okay.
So we cut $30,000. I'm talking about this fiscal year. So that is obviously going away moving forward. And then the $85,000 total security is the other thing that we didn't complete, didn't jump on in 2024. As for 2025, we have a series of different things. This is My Civic Pro, which is an $18,000 charge that has a piece to do with community outreach. That's still included in there. There's a $5,000 piece that consists of Ron's software for community development solutions.
I don't need to know all the general details, but when something's going up 30 and 40%, there's got to be a general overall theme. And that's what I'm struggling with. And to piggyback onto that, the professional services are going up 60%. Okay, and by the way, in the last 4 years, we've got rates at IT, and that's okay if that has to be the case, but something else has to give, okay? Because at the end of the day, we have more than doubled personnel, and we have all but doubled O&M. And so if there's something compelling out there that we're not aware of, I know we hired another person, that part I get, okay? But if there's something compelling out there around O&M that we're missing, because my impression was we were generally providing getting the same services. Yeah, maybe they'd have been up 10, 12% because of some networking stuff and so forth that you expected, but to see that it's up and projected year end at 436 and going to 594, what am I missing? What's going up that much?
Well, again, if we got to get into the weeds a little bit, because there's 50 line items in here that make up this line item. $15,000 in cloud storage, disaster recovery. We'd like to have it.
So is that what we had before?
This is new. We do not
Oh,
have.
so there's new services.
Including in all of our encode support that went up $21,000. That's a jump there.
What
Like I
kind of
said,
percentage is that, do you know?
percentage of 21,000 on 340,000.
Yeah, so that's like 8%, okay.
Cloud storage, there's a $6,000, again, you said you didn't want to get into the details, but the details matter here. There's a $6,000 line item on the City Hall copier that came from 1013. There's a $3,000 increase on the elevator phone that wasn't there before. A remote agent, as we lose / in some of their services, there's some pieces that we're trying to fill in on the back end. Antivirus, again, it's very fluent when we're getting rid of the services that / is offering and then going out to bid with Huber. It's not apples to apples on exactly what they're bringing to the table yet. So we're trying to kind of fill in that so we don't drop our day-to-day operations for security and that type of thing. So, I mean, I'd be happy to send this to you that gives you all of the details and not go line by line. And then it also has our daily increases. But this is things like Office 365, which you and I spoke about. There's security pieces in that. There's email security that consists of $30,000. There's $10,000 Adobe licenses. So there's just lots of significant software pieces that the entire city uses that all fall under this specific line item.
And so the next line item of professional services, is there something, okay, let's start with, is any of that transferred over from something that we did before?
What is professional services? Maybe that's the first question.
So the
I understand.
professional services is the Huber and Associates contract that I brought to you guys at the last board meeting. Again, we're replacing / and the services that we are asking them to do. We are focused on cybersecurity, which I know the return on investment, it's tough to wrap our head around, but keeping us secure, and then the insurance the insurance requirement that I dig into on Maddie's side. All these different checks and balances that are required to keep the city safe. We took the approach of, instead of having a help desk at the front end and not feeling like we were getting the juice out of the squeeze, brought that in-house. So we're focused on cybersecurity, the networking aspect that we've never had at the city of Osage Beach, and the telephone system that we weren't paying anything for, that previous employees brought to the board and we approved. Now we have a phone system in-house that / was maintaining for us for free under our previous contract. It's not necessarily free when we're going out to bid on the managed service side. So the cost difference there, when you look at it dollar for dollar, it does appear that it's more, but again, with the $85,000 security package that / was recommended that we put in place, that the board approved, that we didn't end up implementing, we got to take that into consideration. It would actually be cheaper to go this route with Huber and Associates focused on the security side.
I don't want to give you the impression that I think that we're doing things we shouldn't be doing. We all know the challenges with IT, and we know that the costs are skyrocketing. But if we're going to see costs in IT that are going to raise that much, then as a team somehow, board and staff, whatever, somehow we have got to change the overall rate of increases when we've got overall the departments, especially on the general fund side, when we've got only revenue increases of 6, 7 to 10% over the last 4 years. I mean, we're only forecasting hopefully she's wrong and we get a 20% revenue bump next year. I don't think anyone's willing to bet on that, okay? So if we're gonna as everyone looks around, everybody's got great reasons why we need to spend more money on certain things. But sooner or later, the bubble pops. And so how you all do that, Devin, good luck. But this is what I'm trying to help everyone understand is it's easy to say, yep, we need to do that, we need to do this, we need to do that. But when we all get down to the bottom, it's like everything's going up but revenue.
Well, and I will say, and again, I know you're not coming at me specifically, but it's kind of hard for me to defend the use of what everybody in the city uses. It's not every piece of software, but it's a significant amount. So for me to sit here and justify why we're doing what we're doing, that line item's 50 deep, and it's hard for me. I mean, there's the pieces that are directly IT related. I'd be happy to get into the weeds on that. Can I justify $10,000 in Adobe licenses? Well, I'd have to justify that across the board. So that's where I kind of get caught or torn, how I try to verbalize. I can't sit there and sell you on something that's wider, that's bigger than me. A lot of this falls throughout the entire.
And that's why I said the team, for lack of a better term,
Right, yeah,
has got to
absolutely.
figure this out with
Well,
Devin's leadership.
My comment is that actually his budget went down,
Correct.
so it didn't go up. So
Against
the-
budget or against actual?
Against budget.
Okay,
And
well-
against actual, he saved 85,000. The reason that is that different, it's $106,000 different. Well, 85,000 of that was the / security portion that we didn't pursue. And then the portions that we absorbed from 1013 was the rest of the addition. So he actually cut his budget.
And that's fine, we can all cut about budget, but at the end of the day, what matters is actuals, okay? And so if there's something we didn't do this year that we should have done and didn't end up paying for it, okay, that affects actuals. Haven't heard that, but if that's the case, so be it, all right? But in the end, the projected actual for let me make sure, scroll up and down, for 24 is 721,000, all right? We're expecting, I assume this budget is set up to demonstrate what we plan to do next year, okay? Is demonstrating over $100,000 increase. And it's all great to say you cut your budget, but what really matters is what you actually do. And so I realize that's one of the challenges in budgeting, okay? But when I look at this, and others may look at it differently, and if you guys want to convince me over time that I'm looking at it the wrong way, so be it. But if we spent $721,601 last year and we did a good job, then help me understand why we need to spend another $100,000. Now, if there's reasons for it, for example, we've got new malware out there and we've got to buy a $50,000 new malware defender. Okay, that's the conversation that I completely understand. So,
And I see two other areas in here that helps to justify. One is we had a contract with an outside vendor that they chose to not even participate, and the new vendor came in a little more. And then the other thing is this, this moving, this eliminating a part of the one piece of the budget and spreading it out over everybody else's. Some of that is difficult to show. The fact that it was just absorbed into the individual department's budget. And those two justifications there, it sounds like to me that I can support this budget, this department, excuse me.
And not to beat a dead horse, but there's also a 27,000 piece that I took from Chief Davis on the phone piece. Again, I was trying not to get into the weeds, but I will be happy to send out to the board a breakdown of everything that is maintenance and support, and kind of show you guys. I know it's easier for you to see exactly what that consists of because there is so much to it. I'd be more than happy to send that to you so you guys can actually get that to that level. And then I'd be happy to answer any other questions about the increases built into that line item, if that would help.
Alderman Hoffman.
Yeah, Mike, I think the issue for us at least I look at it this way, when we start looking through these things, whenever there's something that has a big percentage jump, that's always the thing that we're going to start looking into first and go, why? Why did that jump so much? There's got to be savings in there somewhere. So,
Right.
I don't think this is any mark that you're wrong. It's just that that's something that just, it's an easy thing for us to look at and go, wow, there's a big drastic change there.
Absolutely. I understand that. And like I said, trying to do is, but by the not following through with the 85,000, obviously the total year-end budget, that is an attempt to do the best with the least amount and get through this year as we're changing over. But again, I'll be happy to send out the specifics on that maintenance and support and let you guys see what is consisted of line by line.
Alderman Osteen.
Michael, moving forward, a little bit of advice for you. You stated something that if you had said this before we even had the discussion, it would have clarified a lot to us.
Okay.
And that is that a lot of what falls under IT are contracts and expenses you have no control over, and basically it is a citywide or, you know what I'm saying, building-wide services that are increasing that you don't have anything to do with. You have no say in the matter, but they just fall under your department, such as the police department phone system. You don't control that. You have nothing to do with that. The police department, basically, they're the ones that decide through that system. Like I said, we could have avoided a lot of the conversations because, once again, looking at a huge increase is going to raise the questions. But give you the benefit of the doubt, if we'd known a lot of that up front, then I wouldn't have asked a single thing or even batted an eye saying, oh, I get it now. It's across-the-board increases that you can control, so therefore, why ask you about it?
All right. Well, thank you. I kind of appreciate or like being on the hot seat. So.
So that was it. Just moving forward, and actually that's probably a good piece of advice for all departments. Most of these questions stem from increases that we're questioning, but we don't have the clarification or the justification in front of us at this moment or previously for us basically to avoid going down these rabbit holes of questions.
Absolutely.
So moving forward with the budget process, I think all departments should go line item by line item at what they're looking at or what they're presenting and head that off at the pass before we get to this stage. We're wasting hours talking about things that if we had information prior, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. That's all.
Any other questions on 1019? Right. Seeing none, there has been requested to go on a break, and I don't know, is this something that the board wants to finish tonight? Do you, rather than going on a break, do you want to adjourn and come back for another meeting, or Alderman Ross?
I would recommend that we stop at the end of general fund, which we're almost there, right?
Yep.
And then, now, if we need to have a break before we finish the one other department, I think that's in there.
There's two more.
Is there two? But
Yep.
one's economic development.
Yep.
That may be fine, but I think general fund's a great place to stop and pick it back up, but others may have a better idea.
Are you suggesting finish general fund and then have another meeting? Is that what you're suggesting?
Sure, that's what it looks like to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we want to be here
All
till
right, all right,
10 o'clock tonight. I mean,
Is there anybody that can't wait till we're done with general fund? Or do we need to take a break now? All right.
Just to let you know, I was planning on bringing draft 2 to the board next Thursday. If we can't schedule that meeting before the board packet goes out on Friday, then you won't receive a draft 2 next Thursday.
Well, why couldn't we receive a draft 2 by next Thursday of everything we've done and because all you're looking at is the enterprise funds and that needs to be modified.
That's a significant amount of the budget, though. I mean, I'm happy with doing that.
I'm
but-
just trying to figure out how to best move forward.
Yep.
So if we have problems with what you're presenting in the general, because we haven't done any cutting yet.
No,
Or we haven't done any adding either. And I have some of both that I want to do.
yeah, I agree, and I think that's why we should table, get out of here at a reasonable hour and come back with a fresh mind about it personally.
Figure out when we can do it again.
Or I think what Devin is suggesting is it would make it cleaner to get towards the end quicker if we could have a meeting to get the rest of it, for lack of a better term, before a week from Thursday.
Or before she presents the next draft.
Or wait a minute, I may have my dates wrong.
By this Friday.
So basically what Devin, I think, wants to do is complete everything we're going to do, then let her present draft 2,
Okay.
and then we have another meeting in. Is that a fair statement?
That's totally up, I will do whatever you
That would be
guys would like me
great.
to
It would
do.
help
the
them.
most
They wouldn't
efficient
have to
for
have
you?
draft 3 and 4.
Okay, so when would you like to meet to do the second part?
I defer to Bob. And he's got the most rigorous, he and Celeste have the most rigorous schedule, so.
Are we talking this week? Because that's
Let's
almost
start there. Do you have any
improbability.
availability?
Friday afternoon, that's about it.
I'm out.
15th,
I'm out.
the 15th, is that what you're talking about?
Yes. It was the
I am already booked up, work
And all these guys
schedule.
are out too, by the way.
Are you available the 15th? Is that what you're saying?
Friday's my only date, the rest of this
I'm
week that
totally
I'm
open the
available.
15th,
But
anytime you want to do it.
You want to have a Friday meeting?
This is the only time I'm available for the rest of the week.
Okay.
So it's not
Sorry.
Friday? Because deer season starts Saturday morning and
How about,
I won't be
how
there.
about next Monday or
How
Tuesday
about,
then?
no, he just said he's available Friday.
I think it's gotta be before Friday.
But we're getting pushback on other people being available.
I'm saying, why can't we do it Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock?
because I'm not going to be here.
Okay, that's
But
what I'm
that-
asking.
if you guys want to
I
meet, go
thought
right
you were
ahead.
talking about, I thought you
And
were
I
talking about
figured-
Saturday was hunting.
Anybody, it is, but anybody else plan on leaving early on Friday? Or would like to? There's a grin, the grin, but nobody raising their hand. Imagine that, okay?
Devin, when do you need,
right, so-
Devin, when do you need to have this meeting by?
Depends on when we want
Like,
to have
is
draft.
Monday too late?
To get it out in the budget.
She's got to have a couple
I mean, if you guys
days.
don't mind getting the packet on Friday and then us amending the packet
Correct, that's fine.
early next week, then I'm fine with doing Monday. But I
like
would
that.
hate to cut it any closer than that.
I
to
like
make sure
that
you
plan,
guys
but
get
I'm out of
a copy.
state Monday for a funeral.
So are you available next, is there?
I don't have to be here, but I'm gone Monday.
So
Or
we're
would
talking
you-
about Monday.
I'm available anytime
I-
this week or
I am av-
Tuesday next week.
I am available Monday.
No Monday's board unless it's after 3 o'clock.
Tuesday's good, though.
Tuesday is a water board hearing, you can't have it, no, we can't do it on Monday. Tuesday,
Tuesday at 4,
DNR can't do it because DNR has the room.
we have a meeting at
But not
4:30
during the
Tuesday
day.
night.
Move them?
Not during the day.
Yeah, 2 to 3, DNR has a meeting in here.
Oh.
Well, can they go downstairs to the other meeting room?
April and
can-
I need
No,
to be in
I'm
that
sorry,
meeting.
they're in the other boardroom, they're in the Bears boardroom.
We don't have to sit at the dais.
we're
We've
okay.
done this previously without sitting.
Devin and April's got to be at both of them.
Yeah, I have to be at the DNR, we both have to be at the DNR movie.
So no Tuesday.
Bob, are you good Friday? Richard, you're just not good Friday, right?
I'm good Friday and I'm good Monday.
How, are you leaving all day Friday, Richard?
I planned on leaving town about 9 o'clock in the morning, yeah.
Okay, I'm just asking, just trying to,
Monday is not good, this whole room is booked on Monday. Monday does not work unless
Or
we
we
go
could go
downstairs.
downstairs.
We don't have to be on the dais. It's up to you guys.
This is the first year I've been on the dais for the budget meetings in 5
Usually out
years.
there.
We usually sit at conference tables in the big square out here.
I can do Friday or Monday, so it's up to y'all.
Friday,
I'll make Monday happen.
I prefer
The mayor's not here on Monday.
but I'm facilitating the meeting. I think somebody else could do that.
I'm okay with
I was
that.
gonna say, no disrespect, but during these meetings, Devin pretty well runs it.
No, nope, that's fine. I'll be out of state for a funeral on
Or
Monday.
how's Monday with you?
I'm here Monday.
What time?
Monday, had to be afternoon.
3 o'clock?
Monday, the 18th,
2 or 3 is fine.
Monday, the 18th.
Monday mornings are just too tough for me.
What time?
Well, when Devin wouldn't be able to get it in the packet, you're still not gonna get it in the packet.
We're not getting in the packet.
We don't, are you really wanting to have it at the next meeting?
I want it whenever Devin feels
If-
comfortable
if-
giving it to us, honestly.
We're not gonna take any action at the next meeting other than discussion.
Right. My goal is to get it first reading in the first meeting of December.
You
The
have
final.
First reading in December. Here's your time frame. You need to have your first reading for your ordinance, for your budget, on your first meeting in December, your second reading, or if you don't have that done, then
You can be in trouble, yeah.
you're coming in.
Can't spend any
You
money.
do both
Can't
readings
spend
at the
any
same
money.
meeting.
Well, you could.
First and second.
First and
Much
second.
time as we've spent on this, it's not like we're taking something and shoving it down the throat of ourselves quickly. So I can justify, I know Mr. Hoffman has a problem with
No,
that,
that's one where I'm
but
totally
I
on
can
board.
justify only having first and second reading in one night. We've had a lot of
I agree.
discussion on this item.
I
mean,
agree.
it's up to you.
So
but
is it
that's your
Monday
time
then?
frame.
Is
Monday.
it Monday? Is that the consensus?
Time?
Does 2 o'clock work?
Yes, for
What
me.
time?
2 o'clock
2
on
o'clock?
Monday?
2?
And did you say it's downstairs, is
You're
that
gonna have to be
correct?
downstairs in conference room F.
All right, everybody
Is that
good?
the big room where we've,
We've had meetings there before.
okay, yeah.
The court and,
Oh, court.
budget, or, FUI hearing. You said 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock. Richard, you're good with running the meeting? I mean, open and closing, so.
That's fine.
Okay, 2 o'clock Monday.
What did you say is conference room F?
Conference room F downstairs.
It's the big room downstairs, right?
Yeah.
In the center.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll have to set up the owl, so Michael Bean, wherever he went, I'll set up the owl.
I just sent all of you an invite.
All right.
Can we
So-
push through emergency management and economic development, and then we'll be good on general fund?
Yes.
Okay, any questions on emergency management? Budget reduced significantly. None? Okay, economic development, 1021.
Couple questions. Advertisement, is that, it's 25 grand. Is that the TCLA money that we've used?
It was, but Jamie has asked for, she's gone now, has asked for some additional money to help promote, and I'm assuming that when the economic development person gets here, they would like some money to promote our community as well, so I left it at 25.
Even though we're not planning on using the TCLA situation?
Correct.
And I guess on that same vein, I thought about, is there any way that we could use, one of the things we did through the TCLA was we were able to get some match. Even though we gave them something, they were able to get a match from the state. And is there a way that we can still do that? And that's not, you don't need to yes or no, but that needs to be put in the mix, that we might be able to, put some money out to some of that advertisement and get some match from the tourism board, isn't it?
Yeah, my guess is that'd be a possibility, but at this late date, I would doubt we'd be able to for this year.
Well, no, I'm not talking about 24, I'm talking about
I
25.
understand, even for now, normally they applied the year before, so that's just, but, yeah.
So I don't believe so, but you can
Okay.
check into it. And that's because of the designation that TCLA had as a marketing organization. I think it's called a DMO or something to that effect. Now, if CVB becomes that, in that place, I guess we could work with CVB probably. But we won't be able to get the match ourselves because we're not one of those marketing organizations. It has to do with economic development and how their processes. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly confident that's the case.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
So,
The other question I have is professional service and TIF proposal expenditures. Are those neutral revenue, are those revenue neutral?
The TIF proposal expenses.
Yes.
Okay, is the 55,000 revenue neutral?
The professional services is for the sports feasibility study that Drew's working on it now, but I doubt that we will expend much of it this year. So that's a complete transfer from FY '24.
So is the 62,000 originally budgeted for that? 20 of that was spent and we still need 55? Why don't we only need 42?
Well, because I'm not sure if we will spend any of it this year. I don't remember. There's something else out of that account. It's not just the feasibility study. Hold on just a second.
That's a good point, Kevin. About carryover,
Yeah.
unused funds.
Few bucks, few bucks. If it's supposed to be, okay.
We did a grocery market study. That was paid out of that account as well.
Okay, 20,000.
Grocery market study?
I don't remember that.
AWG grocery market study. It was
heard of that.
$2,900.
2,900.
Yes.
So that's 3,000 bucks, so we still got 17,000.
Yeah,
I
just don't know what's gonna get paid for this year versus what's gonna
I
get paid
guess
for in
the
'25.
bottom line I'm looking at, Devin, is if we said we were gonna spend 62 and we've only spent 3, do we need 55,000 for that sports thing?
Right, I understand what you're saying, I just don't know where it's gonna fall. If it falls this year, then we won't need the 55. If it doesn't, then we won't need the 20.
Speaking as a
It'll go back
person
down.
prepping the RFP, I don't think
Okay.
it's going to hit this year.
You don't think it'll hit this year at all?
No, I mean, even if I got it out the door today, it's got to be advertised for 3 weeks.
Right.
And then it's got to hit 2 board meetings, so.
Yeah, so it won't make it this year. So I can take down this year's projected year end down to 3.
Just for clarity on how the financing works, even if it got approved by the board, the money wouldn't be spent this year because they've got to put it together and present it, and then once it's presented, we would pay the bill, right?
Sure, right.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I mean, yeah.
So the money would be spent
Invoice
next year.
something this year, which is, at this point, looks very, very unlikely.
Well, I know it's unpopular, and I'm probably the only one that's going to be on this side of the fence, but that's not my first time. I cannot support the economic specialist position, and I cannot support the sports package RFP that we're talking about going out. When we look at the condition of the budget, I look at taking care of the people we have and the services that we are providing to our community, and being able to keep that up. And these are areas that I think that we don't need when we are not being able to do that with the budget we're having here and replace this stuff. So that's my 2 cents.
Alderman Ross.
I guess I would just say this, when revenues are down, trying to mitigate that with efforts is very important. And if we're going to, how would I say, cut costs because revenues are down, we will, I think that's a invitation for the, not necessarily a death spiral, but we will never be able to change the revenue line or the growth rate. In the end, I'm familiar, the county went up and down in revenues, okay? And when things were tough, you had to market more. And that's what we're getting into, is a flattening. And while I understand the concern around economic development, we have added, and this is probably better for another night, so I'll just stop here, but we have added a bunch of personnel over the last 3 or 4 years. And to be quite honest, I haven't seen one validation as to why. And if we don't need validation for that, and somehow our services haven't increased, and I don't know that they have, I don't understand why we wouldn't consider looking at changing some of that model and looking at how we go after economic development. I realize and we can look at it another way too. At the end of the day, we've got issues around just maintaining what we have, okay? I don't disagree with that. And I figured the economic development person was going to be something that's going to come up, especially when I saw the first cut of what's happening with all of the personnel. But I just think that there's too much personnel to start with before we even talk about economic development, all right? I think that as a suggestion, and I realize everybody's trying to be done, we need to think about the economic development position differently. And I have always said, and I know that, Justin, you're not probably going to care for this, but that needs to be combined with the information officer, okay? I haven't figured out anybody that can show me the value of the information officer other than we really like what they're doing, okay? But we never had one before. And so we never had an economic development person before either. And can we really afford to have 2 separate people for that? And if we can, so be it. I always end up signing off on the budget. But those are the tough calls that we're going to have to think about.
Alderman Osteen.
I have always been in support of this position, but I will give some credence to what Alderman Rucker has stated, that when looking at the budget, looking at personnel, of course, I had somewhat of a knee-jerk reaction thinking this is an expendable position that we could probably cut. But then I start thinking more about this position, and I think one of our biggest marketing and advertising entities on behalf of the city, the Tri-County Lodging Association, is going away. The only way we're going to increase revenue, the only way we're going to increase development is we have to have somebody on the city staff who's going to actively get out there and pound the pavement and try to bring that money here. And once again, one of our biggest supporters is going by the wayside. So who's picking up that slack? Who's going to get out there and attend all the conferences statewide or national conferences promoting Lake of the Ozarks, promoting development, promoting tourism, et cetera? We're losing our biggest cheerleader that did that on our behalf. And therefore, in my mind, this is how we pick up the slack. This is how we breach that gap between shortfalls in budgeting and expenses versus revenue. Somebody who's going to get out there and actively pursue more revenue opportunities for us. So, Kevin, once again, credence to what you stated, because I thought, you know what? If we're trying to cut personnel, and this is one of the big hot button issues, obviously, in this meeting, yeah, that'd be an easy one that's expendable. But somebody needs to be out there pounding the pavement on behalf of the city, and we've lost that entity. So I think this position is more vital and needed now more than ever. So that's all.
Alderman Hoffman.
Completely agree with everything you just said. With the loss of Tri-County Lodging, I think this is a really, really important position. We just don't have anyone out there doing it, and we need to stay competitive. And we're competing with Branson and Nashville and Pigeon Forge. We're not competing with Camden, you know, so we need to be aggressive. And I think that Bob's right. As far as the public information officer, I just don't think they're the same job. They do work hand in hand a lot. But you can just go on our social media and see how much better the communication with the public and our branding is, and all of that is Jamie. And I think she's done a fabulous job with that. And you're right, it's hard to just look at that and see what the true value is. I agree with you on that, Richard. But I'm just from a branding position, I have noticed such a difference on social media, and I think it's great. I'm still going to support this because I agree with everything Bob said. With Tri-County Lodging gone, I just think it's more important to double down on it now.
Alderman Rose.
Well, and I will reiterate everything that you guys have said. And again, I've been a long time strong advocate of wanting an economic developer. And now we have a new chapter that we're looking at our city facing this next year with this entertainment complex, bringing in more people in and more developers wanting to make our city even bigger and better with different businesses, attractions, whatever. But it's a shame about what happened with Tri-County Lodging, and who knows what CVB can do, but you know, they can't just stand on their own either, because they have relied a lot with Tri-County Lodging. And this is where I think, I realize the CVB is for the entire lake area, but we've got to be thinking of Osage Beach also. And that's my biggest concern with anybody that's going to come in here of dealing with the planning and zoning, lower deck, and getting with CVB as well to know as far as what's out there as far as marketing. That's all they've been doing all these years. Anyway, I'm all for it, and I just think, hey, if it's the wrong thing to do, I think it's worthwhile trying, especially in this new chapter in our city.
Yeah. Could I add this too, if you don't mind? Just along, since it's right in the same alleyway. Fishing is down. It was down pretty dramatically this year. If this economic developer comes in and let's say he or she has a lot of connections with the fishing industry, 3 or 4 tournaments could literally pay for that role. That's how much money the fishing can bring in here, and we lost this year on it. And I would, you know, that's hotels. That's going out and spending money at Casey's and dinners. So there's a lot of money that we're losing, and I think that role right there can help solve that.
Very good.
Okay. The only other account in general fund is the transfer to other funds. This is where I talked about earlier, the $950,000 that we didn't need in sewer this year, but has to go there anyways. And then for next year, I don't anticipate transferring anything to sewer. And I've gotten the ambulance fund down to $505,000 compared to the $725 that's in your draft. And that is thanks to Chief's budget savings.
So can we see that before Monday, or at least have it by Monday's meeting?
Which part?
Some of these changes that you talked about, you've got things down that we haven't seen yet.
Do you want me to go ahead and issue a draft too before Monday?
Well, I don't want to, and I don't know others, but I don't want to walk into a meeting Monday and, you know, okay, we're talking about the ambulance and we're looking at a piece of paper that's not accurate, okay, to the latest. And so, yeah, I think we should get something, call it draft 2, amended draft 1, I don't care, I guess.
Yep.
But give us the best you got.
Yep. I
You
can do
talking
that.
about the whole thing, Richard, or just the portions that we haven't covered yet?
Whatever she can produce that within reasonable time frame, you know, because we're not going to go back to general fund probably on Tuesday.
No, I don't plan
So
for
I
that.
guess it would be mainly the components or everything that we haven't discussed. I would
Yeah.
agree, yeah.
Okay, yep, I can do
That
that.
would be a little bit less, but
I can do that, absolutely.
Any other comments or questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Alderman Ross, second. Alderman Morose. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Yeah. We said at the same time. Lordy.